Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Kuchenballer. I'm the chair of the City of Groton Planning and Zoning Commissions. I'd like to call our meeting for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 to order at 6:35. All right, first item on the agenda is the roll call. So I am here. Ms. Bergeron is here. Mr. Morris is here. Mr. Jenkins is not here. Mr. Bryce is here. Mr. Rusk is here, and Mr. Streeter is here. So we have 6 commissioners present, and we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the December 12th, 2023 Special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Is there a motion?
I'm sorry, which meeting are you doing?
December 12th, 2023. Motion by Mr. Streeter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boris,
Discussion.
please.
When we discussed it at the last board meeting, I was under the impression that there was gonna be a more fuller set of minutes because the commission essentially concluded that having gone down that line, at least at that meeting. So I put together from my notes, basically in a narrative form, what my remarks were, and they weren't included. I had a number of points where I thought there were legal issues and factual things that weighed against the approval here, but they're not in there. So what I did do is write a letter, which you have, it's before you today, where I basically put my comments there. So I would like them either included in the minutes or at least included in the record.
Yeah, we'll read them into the record of the public hearing.
And I sent the clerk an email to that effect to include the distilled version of Mr. Rice's comments from the 12/12 meeting. But they weren't in time, I guess, to get included in the amendment to the revised December 12th minutes. So I think including his notes as a submitted for the record would satisfy, including his thoughts along with the record.
Seems reasonable to me. Yes.
The decision I made was to not include them in the minutes, strictly because in the public hearing, every single public hearing, the chairman says people are allowed to speak in favor, against, or neutral. The comments that you made against the application, and that's what it's in favor, against, or neutral to the application. Those I put into the minutes originally. Those were put into the minutes. The other comments that you're asking to have made now are not in favor, against, or neutral to the application. They are issues that if you have, you should speak to the mayor about, not put it in the minutes. And that's why I agree that the letter should go in and not to be put into the minutes.
As you talked about at the last meeting, I mean, first of all, the December meeting seems to be an exception because the board agreed that we were going to have a more full record. So whether it's in that way or another way, I want my thoughts and, I'm sorry, thank you. I want my thoughts and legal points in the record. I was going to talk about it when we get to the January minutes. I understand that there's a legal threshold for minutes, which is extraordinarily low. I don't think it's accurate in any respects, or sufficient, I should say, in any respects for judicial review, for the public to get an understanding of what happened, for the commission when they go back and try and look at what happened, understand what happened. And from an historical viewpoint, so, decades from now, when Jim's successor is trying to look at the history of the area, we're going to have a blank slate when it comes to what's occurred with these types of things. So I'll tell you quite honestly, when we get to January and the subsequent meetings, I'm going to go against it because, in my opinion, while it may be legally sufficient, I don't think it's practically sufficient. And I would urge people in the public at a public hearing to put the remarks in a letter form as well, so that it's in the record, because otherwise it's not in the record. And we have kind of a blank slate here. And also just counting heads who were against it or for it, or some people that just want to talk and stand up at a particular point in time. It's kind of putting a round peg in a square hole, because we're not here to count heads. We're really here to see the substantive, or hear the substantive comments of people.
Exactly. That includes the substantive comments, either for the application, against the application, or neutral to the application. Comments that were not made towards the application itself were not included. I mean, there were comments that I totally disregarded because they had nothing to do with the application itself.
I can't think of what you're referring to.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, but I mean,
But-
people have a right to
but
be heard,
every-
even if they're a little off
every-
base.
Let's talk about it on the record.
Yeah,
Please.
But it wasn't about the application.
it's not your decision.
When somebody comes here and says we should put flags on Main Street, that has nothing to do with the application. I'm happy to listen to them and take that into consideration, but it does not have to do with the application.
No comments, it's not transparent.
Please,
I
Madam
just want,
Please.
excuse me, I just want to clear up something. Commissioner Rice, your comments and your letter are in the record, so they are part of the record. You said them in writing, they're in the
will
record.
be put into the record.
Yes, absolutely. So the information is in the record. It's, that's one thing. The other thing is, we do record these meetings, and these recordings are available. They are a fuller record than any minutes could be. So I think that we meet the beyond the legal requirements of what we're required to keep.
But they're only there for a year, so, you know, when I was referring.
That is the requirement is from is that they be there for a year. That doesn't mean we only keep.
But again, going to my point about looking to the future, people looking back at what happened, they may not be there, and I think it's kind of an imposition when you can have a synopsis in minutes for the public to have to try and find the tapes and look at it.
Yes.
And we voted at the last meeting that we were going to follow Robert's rules, that
Yeah, no, I
followed
was there.
along with every other commission that everybody else is on. It follows with the committee of the whole for the town of Groton. So you have every right to approve or not approve them, but everybody else agreed. And it was voted in.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Changes? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain.
All right, the motion is approved. 5-0-1. All right, next item. Approval of minutes from the January 17th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve from Mr. Russ,
With the correction that it was January 17th.
I'm sorry, did I misspeak? January 17th, 2024, yes. All right, is there a second? Second, Boris. All right, any discussion, changes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. Rice. So the minutes are approved 5-1-0. All right, next item on the agenda is the continuation of the public hearing on zoning amendments number TA 01-23, ZMA number 01-23. There's our text and map amendments to add a new zone called General Commercial Residential Zone and to change the parking and loading requirements. I'll read the public hearing procedures. I am resuming the public hearing on zoning amendment application number TA 01-23 and zoning map amendment number 01-23. The purpose of this public hearing is for the commission to receive input from the applicant, proponents, opponents, and all interested parties or citizens who wish to comment on the aforementioned application. It's important to note that once this application was received by the commission, no member of the commission may comment on or discuss this application with any other member of the commission, the applicant or applicant's agent, member of the public or interested parties, except during the public hearing proceedings. Once the hearing is closed, commission members may only discuss this application with commission members during deliberation. This hearing is being recorded and minutes are being documented. Anyone wishing to speak shall do so from the podium. Please state your name clearly, spelling your last name for the record, and provide your address.
Won't be on the record.
Please speak slowly into the microphone and reintroduce yourself each time you speak. The commission uses the following procedure during public hearings. Each hearing will be introduced. The applicant or designated agent will present the application. The commission staff will have the opportunity to ask questions or provide comments. The applicant will then have the opportunity to address staff and commission questions and comments. The chairman will then ask for public comments in the following order. Comments in favor of the application. Comments in opposition to the application. Comments that neither in favor or opposition of the application. Any questions to the applicant, staff, or commission shall be addressed through the chair. The chair will pose the question or questions to the appropriate party or parties. Please limit public comments to how the application does or does not comply with land use regulations or the POCD. The applicant will then have the opportunity to address public comments and questions. The commission and staff will be provided further opportunity to ask additional questions and offer further comments. These may be directed to the applicant or a member of the public who previously commented on or submitted information for the record. The applicant and members of the public will have one opportunity to respond to commission and staff questions or comments. The commission will then decide whether to close or continue the public hearing to a future date. Once the hearing is closed, the commission is unable to hear additional comments or accept exhibits or correspondence in favor, opposition, or with a neutral position on the application. The commission will then deliberate upon the application. Deliberations will occur during a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The public is welcome to listen to the commission's discussions. Agendas are posted a minimum of 24 hours in advance of regular or special meeting of the commission and are provided on the city's website and at the city clerk's office. During deliberations, commission members will discuss the application with input from staff. The commission will then take into consideration relevant testimony and information provided by the applicant and members of the public. Following deliberations, the commission will then vote on the application. Vote outcomes could be to approve, approve with conditions, deny, or deny with prejudice. Are there any questions regarding these procedures before I reopen the public hearings?
You asking the public? For questions, I'm sorry, we'd like to have.
Are there any questions?
Oh, yeah, are you gonna record our statements?
Yeah, it's all, everything's being recorded.
Yes.
Right, written though, in the minutes properly, like.
We will handle the minutes as the commission has determined they will be handled.
Well, I feel those are unfair, so, thank you for your response.
I just have one quick question, nothing confidential. I sent in 3 emails with concerns and comments, so do I have to go through those again, or?
They'll all be introduced into the record.
And you'll address those questions and comments?
No, that's-
I mean, they're kind of important, so. Do I have
I have a question.
to read through them again? I guess that's what I want to know. Are you going to
Well-
acknowledge them? Or do I have to read them all out again?
If we miss any, you can read them in, okay? How's that?
So what part of the, I'm sorry, what part of the process will I know that I need to read them in? You're gonna read it in before the public speaks?
No,
We're gonna go to the public.
No, I'm sorry, I just don't understand.
No, we're gonna go to the public first.
Okay, so how will I know if you're gonna actually take any action on those questions? and
I will
comments?
answer the questions.
Everything?
Mhm.
Okay, no, that's all right. I just want to make sure those are read in somehow and answered. Okay, thanks.
I have a question, will all the emailed letters be read into the record as well?
They'll all be introduced into the record. We're not gonna read them all.
I think that they should be read.
They'll be introduced into the record and they'll be available. We're not gonna read them all. We'll be here all night.
Well, that's part of democracy. That's a public hearing.
That's the way we're
Okay,
gonna do
That's
it.
your choice.
That's the way we're gonna do it.
All right.
All right, let's see. we extended the public hearing so people would have a chance to look at the information that was provided at the January 17th meeting. It was posted on the city website on January 18th. So I'd like to ask people to focus on that information that was provided in your comments, and also to limit your comments to 5 minutes. So is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of the application? Leslie, do you have anything you want to start with?
No.
Well, let's do it this way. Let's start by entering all the emails into the record. Let's start there.
Thank you.
Would you like me to do that by favor or against?
Well, you could tell us who sent the message, if we haven't addressed what the address is, and whether it's favorable or unfavorable.
Okay, so the first response is from Jose Vega of 390 Paquonic Road. And I'm writing to express my full support for this proposed zoning change to allow mixed-use residential in the DC area. A longtime resident who deeply cares about the development and prosperity of our area, I believe this change is long overdue and necessary for the revitalization of our city. Groton City and our community have been struggling with a lack of redevelopment and progress in the past recent years. One glaring example of this situation is the Five Corners area, where proposed development plans are met with resistance from residents who sought something better. However, due to the inability to reach a consensus, that area now remains in a dire condition, devoid of much needed rejuvenation and deserved. This serves as a stark reminder that we cannot let perfect be the enemy of good. As we discuss the proposed changes, it is essential to understand to achieve progress, compromise has to be made because by holding out my perfection, we risk further stagnation and missed opportunities for growth and improvement. The proposed zoning change presents a valuable and sensible solution. I urge everyone to consider the broader benefits of the zoning change and the positive impact it will have on our community as a whole. Let us not repeat the mistake of the past and allow fear to change or hold us back from realizing the potential of this community for generations to come. Thank you for your consideration. Now, moving towards statements in opposition of the proposed zone change. I received something from Ian Thomas of 24 Jefferson Drive, Groton, Connecticut. I am opposed to the proposed zone change.
We're not reading that one all the way through.
That's it. That's all it says.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Right, third one is from Barbara Wanamaker. It's not that right. 67 Ramsdale Street, Groton, Connecticut. So there are some general questions about the notices of the meetings and when they go out. I know that's something that we talked about before, but in a nutshell, she says, I'm opposed to the changes for the following reason. There was insignificant notice of the proposed change provided to the public. There was insufficient and ineligible information provided at the meeting. The minutes of the meeting were insufficient as they did not include all public speakers. There was no input from the local fire department as to the significance of the fire department to the sufficiency of the fire department to protect and respond to the increased population and increased number of stories. Is the equipment adequate to fight a 5-story fire? Any information regarding the required increase in the fire force? This proposed zone change will negatively affect my property values as it will decrease the value of the impacted view of the river from the north of my home. In addition, single-family home prices will generally decline, and the decline of the area is changed to multi-dwelling units. Single-family homes appreciate more than condominiums. It is well settled that paying a higher sales price for a property where they have to pay condo fees is limiting. Many home buyers would rather put the money into home improvements of their own choosing, which increases the aesthetics of the area. This change will have a significant impact on the lives of individual residents as well as the business and government that operate in the area. No traffic studies have been provided. No study as to the hugely increased population and the effects on taxes. The local school system and utility, sewer and water services have been provided. I believe that despite Ms. Green's statement that she has not spoken to any developers regarding the targeted properties, there has been a particular developer interested in the project, and the city has submitted this proposal instead of the developer. By approving the zone change, the city loses all leverage if someone wanted a zone change. The change is already in place, and it is just a matter of the detail of subsequent approvals. Given the enormous impact of the zone change request, I request all commissioners to strongly review any type of potential conflict or the appearance of impropriety, both financially and through contracts or communications and development of this zone change outside of the duties of the planning and zoning commission. Another insert from April Thomas. At 51 Ramsdale Street, I oppose the current
Thompson,
Thompson,
April Thompson.
April Thompson. I oppose the current application for the zone change of Groton Banks. As someone who lives in the neighborhood, it would be welcome to see Bank Street thrive. Having said that, I feel that giving the opportunity for 6-story buildings to be put in the area is not the way to go. It is not at all the character of the neighborhood. This is a historic part of the city, beautiful houses that have been here since the 1800s. They have plaques and to commemorate.
You're right.
Thank you. The founding owners and are huge with pride by the current, and are hung with pride by the current owners. It is a beautiful place to call home. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion. You want me to keep going, correct?
Yeah, we started down this road, we're gonna.
We're gonna go.
finish it.
Okay. So 7-9. 129 Paquonic Road. To whom it may concern regarding the amendment for high density housing. TA, all the numbers, I am writing in opposition to any kind of amendment in the city of Groton allowing for high density housing to be more than 4 stories high. Not only this kind of high density housing creates adverse effects on the quality of life in an already densely populated area, but also benefits only the developer. Taxpayers will end up paying the price in the long run. There are plenty of empty, unused buildings that can be converted into suitable housing. Wendy Kathleen Love of 25 Church Street. I'm writing to voice my opinion about the proposed zone change in Groton City. My home is one of the homes that is in the zone. I'm against this change and believe that a better plan needs to be presented. The zone change, I believe, would be detrimental to the home values of the proposed area. One of the reasons I brought this home was because of the view. One of the reasons I bought this home was because of the views of the river, and if a 6-story apartment building could possibly be built in front of my house, obstructing the view, obstructing the view of this home would not be appealing to any potential buyers or for my enjoyment of the property while living here. I am close to retirement and would like to think that I could sell my home and not take a loss. Adrian Bean of 37 Church Street. Voting against the new proposal of increasing the allowable stories in the proposed area. So these next two are in favor or against or neutral, but are questions from.
Go ahead.
You want me to continue reading that? Before I start?
I was just gonna ask, can you get her some water, please?
Oh,
Okay.
can't hear me?
No, I just want to make sure that you have water. You can't do that.
Yeah, thank you for reading, Sarah. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Actually, for. I had Mike Boucher that I was gonna read. Should I ask him if he wants to comment on this, or should I
Just,
read the one? that-
just read.
You want a break? You want me to read it?
Okay, all right. So from Michael Boucher, 16 Hillside Ave, Groton, Connecticut. Again, I asked what individuals or commercials, business groups wishing to develop properties, seek zone changes or text amendments to current zone regulations have contacted directly or indirectly the mayor's office, Leisure Community, or the planning and zoning commission members in the area affected by TA 0-23, ZMA 0-101-23. Can you go into more detail about the 6-story residential and or commercial uses to be allowed by special permit? 1, height 75 feet, means what? 2, what are building heights measured, to the eve of the roof deck? 3, are attics or
So-
raised?
sorry. It's, our building heights measured to the eve or roof deck. It's common, you
I got it.
understand.
Are attics or raised basements excluded? Are any other rooftop structures excluded from the 75 feet height limit, such as masts, leaves, clock towers,
Belfries.
belfries, clock towers, chimney flues, water tanks, elevator, boat heads, or air conditioning units? Would a rooftop would a rooftops social area like the one recently proposed in Five Corners application be excluded from the 75 feet height limit? Additional questions, can you provide more information on how a special permit will work? Can you provide the guidelines and parameters for special permits and examples? What types of legal challenges can the city expect from denied special permits? What legal advice has the mayor, city planner, or members of the planning and zoning commission received concerning this zone change, particularly special permits for building over 4 stories? Please provide an estimate on the maximum number of housing/apartment units that would be possible in this 58-acre zone change. These are questions specific from the slideshow from the January meeting. Slide 5, Main Street study recommendations. Can the commission explain how they hope to achieve the missing middle or scale of development given the extremely short distance from the proposed area of zone change and homes nearby, directly across the street from, and many homes nearby, directly across the street from, and many just a few lots away from the neighborhood of Groton Base? Number 2, on slide 6, Main Street study recommendations. How does the Planning and Zoning Commission hope to continue to maintain and enhance the sense of place along Main Street, including use of village district provisions in the zoning regulations and design guidelines and historic character and scale of Main Street with proposed 75-foot tall, 6-story commercial apartment buildings? Question 3, slide 7, Main Street study conceptual development plan, the GCR zone. This slide shows a 5-story building. Why is the commission now pushing for 6 stories? Okay, so. All right, so Frank Jeanette of 108 Main Street. I'm writing regarding the proposed zoning amendment for zone changes allowing 6-story buildings and 75 feet height high, which I do not consider a good fit for the neighborhood. The current proposal would allow between 2 to 6 stories in the general commercial zone from the northern part of Main Street along Bridge Street and North Street. The proposal allows any building between 2 and 4 stories to be built as of right, and for 4 to 6 stories requiring a special permit, including a public hearing. Other bulk regulations include the exclusion of open space, limits on percentage of impervious surface, etc., are also included. I have a couple of questions regarding this matter. Has there been a professional independent traffic study? Has a professional independent traffic study been done, and what were the results? Traffic studies are done to assess the existing conditions and the impact of a specific proposed project. In light of the expanding workforce for electric boat and the nationwide housing shortage, and the advantage of allowing housing in greater density than the currently allowed maximum 2 dwelling units per parcel in the GC zone is that some EB, Pfizer, and Avery Point may choose to live in new housing on Bridge Street so that they have the option of walking or biking to work instead of driving. Locating denser housing in the GC area will allow those who work elsewhere to jump onto I-95 without coming from the areas in the southern parts of the city and using Main Street. We are also using a tactical urbanism installation later in the year to try some alternative traffic patterns at the Bridge Street I-95 gateway to encourage commuters from the south part of the city to use Clarence B. Sharp Highway instead of Thames and Mitchell. The professional consultants, the police and fire chief, and several other professionals on city staff have been working on this project for a couple of years. Not exactly sure what the question was there, but just read it.
What's in red is actually the answer,
His answer?
my
Your
answer to
answer.
him.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Said I just read them.
You can read the whole thing because it's there.
Okay. What is the name of the company that performed the study? The response, no specific study was done for the proposed zone change that comes with specific project applications.
You've been talking about the Main Street study there,
That was,
that was Minigrid Partners.
Yeah.
Number 3, how do you plan to handle the increase in traffic since Main Street is such a narrow street and depending on the time of day, it can be very difficult to navigate your way through when traffic is traveling in both directions? Response with the feelings above. Number 4, I know zoning requirements. I know zoning requirement is that each unit has 2 parking spaces for each unit on site. The response, this requirement was overridden by the state of Connecticut in 2021. The city is not required more than 1 parking space for studio and 1 bedroom dwelling units and 2 parking spaces for 2 or more bedroom units. Question 5, where is the additional parking going to be when occupants of the property has events guests since the road is so narrow? Is it and there? No, it is. And there is no street parking for the existing residents on Main Street. The response, each parcel or unified development is required to provide the number of parking spaces for each of their uses. These spaces need to be located in the same site or be contracted with within a specific number of feet from the new development by lease with a nearby property owner. The spaces leased by a nearby property owner may not bring their required parking numbers below what was originally approved. Such arrangements must be demonstrated to the planning office and to the planning and zoning commission. The question 6, are these units going to be mixed use housing or market rate housing? Are these units going to be mixed use housing or market rate housing? Because the city of Groton, because the city of Groton exceeds the number of affordable housing units required by the state of Connecticut, no developer is required to include below market rate housing. However, any developer who chooses to or is using funding that requires a certain percentage of affordable housing units to be included in development must have such housing on their deed. I hope this helps. I have answered your question. Okay. Yes. And, there's one with communication from Michael Boucher, where the proposed zoning amendments were shared. There is another from Michael Boucher. I have to repeat that out.
No.
Um. Another comment, from Michael Boucher on January 19th. Thank you very much, and thanks for your presentation on the 17th. I think you are much closer to a positive result for all your hard work. Next steps would be to reduce the area that is high density building, that a high density building would allow. Number of stories is difficult. I would reduce the height to 5 stories in a few spots and 4 in the rest, but I think 6 stories may work in the area of the old skating rink. This would make a better scale development. Yep. Another entry from Michael Boucher. Just a reminder that the draft minutes of December 12th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting are missing some participants during the public comment portion of the zoning amendment. Comments are missing from Michael Boucher, Ian Thomas, and possibly others. I suggest staff review the recording of the meeting and correct the meeting minutes to ensure all who spoke are recorded in the minutes. I am also have concerns about the public notification of the next P and Z meeting and hearing on the same zoning amendment application scheduled for January 17th. Notice of this meeting was published in the day paper on January 10th and 11th. This is not seen to meet the legal requirements set by the state of Connecticut for notifying the public. And I have an entry for Terry Rice. Do you want me to read it? Or how do you? Want me to read it?
If you want me to.
You want me?
Give your voice a break.
Sure, Terry, go on.
Thank you.
Have to find it. Thank you. Okay, dear members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it was my understanding from the discussion at the January 17, 2014 commission meeting that because of the insufficiency and inaccuracy of the minutes of the December 12, 2023 commission meeting regarding the above matter, Mr. Russ would prepare draft minutes that more fully and accurately reflected the discussions that occurred at the December 12th meeting. In order to assist in the preparation of those minutes, I converted my notes regarding my remarks at the meeting into a narrative, expecting those comments would appear in the minutes. I received the minutes today. The letter was dated February 20th yesterday. I received the minutes today and found that my remarks were excluded from the minutes. In order to ensure that my comments are included as part of the record, I reiterate those remarks herein for inclusion in the record. I reiterate my remarks of December 12, 2023, and I intend that they also be included in the record for the February 21, 2024 meeting. I regret that I have to again relate my remarks for the February 21st, 2024 meeting, but the exclusion of my remarks, which were critical of the proposal mandates, that I reiterate the same. The following is my recollection of my remarks as submitted to Mr. Rusk. To the extent that any of the remarks are not identical to what was stated at the December 12th meeting, I so state them here for inclusion in the record of the February 21st meeting. And this is the narrative I had prepared. Mr. Rice stated that the notice to the public was inadequate. He had requested that the staff make an effort to reach out to the public and expected that the hearing would be noticed on the first page of the city website and in the city newsletter. He stated that the meeting isn't even on the calendar on the first page of the city's website. The notice stated B zoning amendments TA 01-23, ZMA 01-23 text and map amendment, add new zone, general commercial residential zone, changes parking and loading regulations. In addition, there clearly is insufficient information in the what's in the page. Seems like something's missing. In addition, there is insufficient information in the record to substantiate the zoning amendment. The propriety of the determination of any land use agency, whether legislative or administrative, is dependent on the record before it. No information, documents, and reports have been presented to the commission to justify this radical zoning amendment. What type of information should we have in order to make an intelligent determination? We have no information about the existing housing stock, how many rental or multifamily units presently exist. We don't have that information. There is no projection of the number of dwelling units that might be constructed or the number of bedrooms, but doing the math, nearly 3,500 are possible. There has been no quantification of the reported need for additional housing units. There have been no studies or projections as to the amount of traffic that might be generated or the impact on local roads, possibly 5,000 additional cars. There have been no reports or studies regarding the potential impact on infrastructure, the adequacy of and impact of the provision of emergency services, or the capacity of the water and sewer systems to accommodate such unknown development. There have been no reports or studies of potential impact on the school system. There have been no projections on the impact, positive or negative, on real property taxes. Will such developments be positive or negative with respect to real property tax for existing residents? There have been no hypothetical elevations or representations of the visual impact of 6-story structures on the adjoining residential areas, the Groton Banks Historic District, or the view to and from the Thames River. I understand that Connecticut does not have anything similar to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which exists in New York. However, by analogy, the type of information that would be required pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act illustrates the type of information with which the commission should have been provided before it even considered a zone change of this magnitude. First of all, because of the magnitude of the potential development as well as its location adjacent to the Groton Banks Historical District, it would have resulted in an initial presumption that would have a significant negative impact on the environment, thereby likely to require the preparation of an environmental impact statement. However, regardless of whether an environmental impact statement would be required, the reviewing agency would be required to consider, among other things, traffic, solid waste, water consumption, effect on emergency services, energy consumption, effect on real property taxes, conflict with the community's current plans or goals, impairment of the character or quality of historical or aesthetical resources, impact on schools, impact on recreational facilities, effect on property values. The agency would be required to consider long-term and short-term direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts, which are likely to be undertaken as a result thereof or dependent thereof. In other words, you would have to analyze the impacts from the actual development that's likely to occur, at least in a generic matter. We have none of that information. It's irresponsible to act without this type of information. In fact, there are no facts in the record to substantiate the zone change. What is the impetus for the amendment? This is not the result of a specific development proposal, which is the usual manner for such proposed amendments. I stated that I believe that the approval would be horribly detrimental to the character of Groton. The area under consideration is the gateway to the community. It's adjacent to single-family homes. It's adjacent to the Groton Banks Historic area. It's entirely inappropriate given the location adjacent to single-family neighborhoods in proximity to historic areas. I also stated that the amendments contrary to the mandate of the authorizing legislation. Section 8-2 provides that zoning regulations shall be designed to lessen congestion in the streets. Clearly, this is not the case if the amendment is passed. Section 8.2 also directs that zoning regulations be designed to protect the state's historic and environmental resources. Being adjacent to the Groton Banks Historic area along the Thames River, the amendment is not designed to protect the state's historic and environmental resources, but in fact, it's destructive of those resources. Section 8-2 also directs that such regulations facilitate the adequate provisions for transportation, water, sewage, schools, and parks. There's no documentation that water and sewer capacity exists. There's no information about the impact on the school system because the city has failed to enact amendments that require developers to set aside recreation land on the site of development or pay a sum of money in lieu thereof, so parks and recreation facilities can be improved to serve the increased demand created by such massive development. The proposed amendment does not facilitate the adequate provision of parks. taxpayers would be responsible for creating recreational opportunities and facilities for the new residents, not the developers who have profited. Also, such regulations are required to be drafted with reasonable consideration to the physical site characteristics of the district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses, and with a view to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout a municipality. Being adjacent to a low-density residential district in an historic area, the amendment violates this dictate of the enabling legislation. The enabling legislation further states that zoning regulations must be made with reasonable consideration for the protection of historic factors, as I previously discussed. That's clearly not the case. Case law states that the power of a local zoning authority to adopt regulations is limited by the terms of its enabling legislation. And I cite a couple of Connecticut decisions. The amendment is contrary to the directives of the enabling legislation. Moreover, section 8-2 of the state statute states that zoning regulations may not be applied to deny any land use application, including for any site plan approval, special permit, special exception, other zoning approval on the basis of the district's character, unless such character is expressly articulated in such zoning regulations by clear and explicit physical standards for site work and structures. It would be inappropriate to approve any significant rezoning or zoning amendment until the city's zoning regulations are appropriately amended to permit the commission to consider a district's character in entertaining land use applications. Whatever development that arises because of the amendment will affect the city for generations, unfortunately, in a significantly deleterious manner. There's no justification for the amendment in the record. The proposal is insufficiently supported, ill-advised, and horribly detrimental to the character of the city. And I just close with, please ensure that this letter on the foregoing marks included the record of these proceedings.
Thank you.
Okay, your turn.
Thank you for that. All right, so we do have communication from Jason Russ that basically kind of not as detailed as you did, but summarize what you said to be included into the minutes for this. There are the next submissions that I have are all in regards to commissioners potentially recusing themselves from this application process. I have, is it okay if I lump them together and summarize them?
Yeah, I think that's best.
So we received comments from Ian Thomas of 24 Jefferson Ave, Michael Boucher, 16 Hillside Ave, and John Goodrich of 1315 River Road, Mystic, Connecticut. All of them are requesting that the Planning and Zoning Commission, that Commissioner Jason Russ recuse himself, or that the Planning and Zoning Commission disqualify Commissioner Russ from voting on the zone change. The basis of this really cites that Commissioner Russ sits on the Economic Development Commission and the P&Z Planning and Zoning Commission, and there's a conflict of interest there. Mission statement. Jason Russ has been heavily involved in the process, unifying economic and community interests throughout the city of Groton by serving as a conduit between the city, Groton staff, and community stakeholders to plan and implement strategies that enhance the attractiveness and viability of doing business in the city of Groton.
I think that sums it up.
Okay. There is also a similar request for Commissioner Ronald Forrest to recuse himself from this voting process as well. The concern being cited there is a potential conflict of interest because of relations to property. Relations to
Relation to the
owners.
property owners on things.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Is that it?
That's
All right. Leslie, would you want to respond to the question from the producer?
There are there were several questions that were embedded in the email, so I'm gonna go through these. And answer the questions. As they are in my file at the moment. Regarding questions from Ms. Wanamaker, nothing would ever be built that wasn't compatible with and goes through the fire department review. All buildings before they're built, before they can get their building permit together. Fire department review, and we do have fire equipment that can reach more than 6 stories. The impact on the view of the river, I understand people are concerned about that. We have no view corridors. The state of Connecticut prohibits that except on certain ridge lines that are written into the state of Connecticut general statutes. Issues of whether buildings are condominiums or whether they're rental cannot be considered when the commission is making a decision about housing that violates the Fair Housing Act. No traffic studies, as I mentioned in my response to Mr. Jeanette, no traffic studies have been done. Those are all done based on the individual applications as they come in. The effect on property taxes and the effect on school systems are specifically prohibited from being considered by Connecticut state statute. That's a state matter. If people have issues with that, they should talk to their state reps, but that is the law in Connecticut.
Leslie, can I ask a question? Because you said that before. And I frankly did a fair amount of research and I found no cases that dealt with that issue, at least supported that conclusion. I did find one case where the courts upheld the zoning amendment because one of the things they cited was that it would be beneficial from a tax perspective. But I found nothing that said that obviously we can't control the schools, we can't control what the tax rate is or anything like that. But I saw nothing that said we can't consider that as part of our deliberations.
I can get you citations.
I
Not tonight.
appreciate it because I
Yep.
think that's a relevant consideration. It's too bad we didn't have counsel here so that we could deal with that on the spot.
I am certain that it is not allowed in the state of Connecticut.
I'm sorry,
I am certain that it is not allowed in the state of Connecticut.
I need to see it.
I will show it to you. The issue with parking, as I mentioned in my response to Mr. Jeanette, the state of Connecticut overruled our parking requirements. We are not allowed to require more than 1 parking space for studio or 1-bedroom apartment and not more than 2 parking spaces for a 2-bedroom or more. That also tangential to that issue is that all parking does need to be on site or within a very limited walkable distance by lease, and so all of that has to be approved by the commission and be recorded on the land records. Several people have mentioned the issue of changing the zoning of Groton Bank. Nothing is being changed on Groton Bank. Groton Bank remains the same zone that it's always been. We're looking to change the general commercial zone, which is the very upper part from northern border of Broad Street up Thames Street only, and then across Bridge Street and a portion of North Street. Again, issue of view corridors. Mr. Boucher asked about building height. The building height is measured based on the definition that is included in the zoning regulations. If it is a sloped roof, it is measured to the midpoint of the eave of the slope. And and this is typical for anywhere in Connecticut. And if it is a flat roof, it is measured to the upper edge of the roof beam.
Sorry, can you say that again, the half of the eave or the upper portion of the eave?
Show you the picture. The flat roof. Midpoint first picture. Leave this up here if anybody wants to take a look at it. Attics are included in that they are underneath, typically underneath an eave. So they are included in the height. I can't think of a geometry that would have an attic outside or beyond a roof. But it would be included in the height. Raised basements, you measure the height is measured from the average grade next to the building to either the top of the roof beam, if it's a flat roof, or the midpoint of the eave if it's of the slope of the roof if it's a sloped roof.
Ask another question.
Yep.
So the roof beam on a flat roof, like a commercial building, that is the flat, to your point, that is a flat surface, say a EPDM roof, right? And then whatever gunnel or however you want to describe the mini wall that surrounds that parapet, that would not be included in the height.
That's
What about appurtenances or equipment that like Mr. Boucher was curious about, commercial AC units and that sort of thing up on top?
things like AC units. What we try and do with flat roofs is we try and get them to gather their AC units into where the middle of the core of the building is, so that you can't see them from the ground. So to make that as aesthetically non inconspicuous as possible. If there is another story that's smaller than the roof area, for instance, for a rooftop restaurant or a community room or something, the top of that would be what is considered the height of the building. Okay, so it doesn't stop at the even necessarily what you can see from the tree.
I'm sorry. to interrupt.
Leslie, I have a question. Are some of these definitions in the regulation?
Yes,
Or all of the regulations?
yes.
So would that in theory eliminate the rooftop that we were talking about, the social area on 5 corners? If it is, that needs to be included in the 75 feet, so you couldn't put it on
That
top.
is, right, that is included, it has to be within the 75 feet if it's a 6-story.
So you
building.
couldn't do what they wanted at 5 corners.
They were gonna lower it to 5 stories and
Right, right, okay, I'm sorry,
And then
the application was for 5 stories with a party rooftop, basically. But in this application, the year or so change, all
it
that.
can't
would have
be
to
6 stories plus a rooftop unit.
Okay, thank you, that's what I want, thank you.
Okay, and things like mast belfries, clock towers, chimney flues, water tanks, elevator bulkheads, those are all. There's a different answer to most of those. Depending, like chimneys need to be, I believe it's 2 feet above and 10 feet from the nearest combustible material of a building. I think that's right. It's a building code issue. But I think that's right. So there's some things, you might have a chimney that goes 2 feet above. There are answers to all these questions, there are different answers to each one. To be honest with you, I've never had to deal with a belfry And church steeples are sometimes regulated by the number of feet. We have regulations in here. I also haven't had to deal with that here, so. An interesting application. Somebody came in and wanted to build a house of worship with a steeple. So these, but these were all addressed within the regulations and many of them within the definitions.
Okay, thank you.
And I answered your question about the rooftop social area. With regard to how a special permit would work, special permit would work under these regulations, the same as they work anywhere else. Their uses are categorized. Zoning permits are the lowest and least intensive review, single family houses. You don't have to come to the commission for a single family house. The next level up is site plans, where you come to the commission if you have a site plan. These uses are all are assigned within the regulations. If it's not in the regulations, it's generally not allowed.
I'm sorry. Just repeat that one more time. If it's not in the regulations, it's not allowed.
If you are, let's say you want to build something in a in the WBR zone, for instance, okay? If that use is not allowed, if that use is not listed within the WBR regulations, then it would be listed, if it was listed, it would be listed as either requiring a zoning permit, a site plan approval, or a special permit. Those are in increasing levels of intensity of review.
Okay.
The special permit, the most intense, is where you have, which have, that application would be, would include a site plan, and would include a public hearing. Okay, site plan and zoning permits generally don't. So, and those are all enumerated within the zoning regulations. If you want to do something that is not allowed in the zoning regulations at the moment, anybody has the right to come and try and amend the zoning regulations to allow that use wherever they have the right to do so. Okay, so dog groomers, for instance, would, or something that akin to animal grooming was not allowed in a certain zone. If somebody wanted to open an animal grooming business, they would have to come in right now and apply the way our regulations are right now to apply to have that added as a use.
Okay, thank you.
Special permits are denied when they don't meet the requirements of public health, safety, and welfare, and if they don't meet the zoning regulation. Those are the legitimate reasons for denying your special permit. As far as legal advice, none is necessary. The commission has the absolute right to require zoning a special permit for buildings over 4 stories or over 5 stories or over, that's a planning issue, and it's not a legal question. For the maximum number of housing units that would be allowed, I think that Mr. Rice's numbers are a little deceiving, because remember, you can only, based on the draft proposal, you can only cover 60% of the land. You have to have parking, and it's a when you're designing a building, when you're designing a site, there's finessing that goes on with that. Well, I can't fit all the parking if I maximize the number of units. So I got to cut out some of the units to add the parking, and vice versa. If there's, it requires open space, that is, grass or landscaped or playgrounds or something like that. And those would be worked out per each application, but again, that takes up space, so it's not a 1-for-1, you have 58 acres, multiply it out and you come up with a number. Because it doesn't, nothing else works, and that would be a legal application.
So do you have a number, just to help try to clarify?
I don't.
We might be
I
talking
don't.
about, so,
Because all the sites are different, some of them are on the edge of a slope.
no, I understand that, but I'm just assuming you must have some idea of going forward.
When you think about it as a 6-story building, so thinking about it at the maximum,
Uh-huh.
you're looking at a 6-story building with 10 apartments on a floor.
You think only, so in the, I'm sorry if I'm asking you questions. The one that was demonstrated in the Ames Street study, the big one where Circle Motors is and.
Yeah, that was done.
No, but I'm just saying, as an example, that would be more than 10 apartments on a floor, right? That looks pretty large.
It probably would, it may not be, but
Right,
it's also not a proposal, it was an example.
oh, no, I understand that, but when you design regulations, you must have an idea of the impact going forward.
Yeah, I look
So
at
that's
the
what
ratios
that's
and I
what I'm
look at what the land is and what they.
Right, so you made a decision to do this. I mean, does anyone have an idea of how many units we're talking about?
So that building that was in the concept plan,
Uh-huh.
had 104 units in it. On a
Okay.
3.6 acre site.
So
that's way less than.
So what, I mean, just shoot me a number. I'm not gonna argue about the number, just,
I won't give you a number because I can't give you a number.
that's it, I mean.
I have a number for one spot.
Sure.
All right, so do you want me to use the 3.6?
3.6,
3.6.
The 3.6 acre site.
Find it out by 58, multiply it and come up with a number
well,
like.
you gotta make sure that 58 is the right number of acres, because it's,
Right, that includes the streets and, lots of
Okay.
places.
I,
you
it
can't
just
build.
seems like such a simple question for a zone change. Nobody has.
It
any
is
idea.
not, it's not, that's the point, it's not a simple question, that's why these things are looked at site by site.
nobody can actually give you an accurate number, right? We can't give you an exact number.
No, I just,
I think his question is if it was developed to the maximum potential of all the properties, is that what you're asking?
right, what's the maximum potential? Yes, yeah, I mean, you have the 58 acre zone change, what, as a condition, how can you not have an idea of what might happen as a result of your zone change? That's crazy, in my opinion.
Okay,
I mean-
noted. Thank you.
So you have no idea. I see.
Your comments have been noted.
Okay.
No, I just respond to something you said, if I may. You said my number was misleading, I think, but that is exactly the point that, and I think Mr. Boucher was making the same point, that we're going into this without having any realistic analysis of what the likely development is, and hence traffic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I want to mention, wonders of the internet, the enabling legislation 8.2 specifically says zoning regulations shall and F facilitate the adequate provision for transportation, water, sewer, schools, parks, and other public requirements. So yeah, schools are relevant. I mean, it says it in the statute.
It's, you, I think are. I will look at it, I will write.
Okay, and again, I haven't had time sitting here to find something more specific on taxes, but I did find a case that seemed to indicate that was the case.
Okay, I'm, at this point, trying to get through this.
Can I ask a simple question? I hope. That example you just gave us, how many acres was that?
3.6.
And that was how many?
That 5-story mixed-use building had 104 units.
And that property that you're talking about was a combination of a couple of existing.
Right,
properties.
it's on 2 existing properties that they currently have buildings on. I mean, the other thing about this is that there are only a couple of lots that in the whole proposal that are empty.
Right.
And the only one of any significant size is the one where the roller rink used to be. Everything else, because this includes like the fifth, this whatever 68 acre number, 58 acres, whatever we're using. That includes like where the outer light plaza is down there. It includes where the motel is.
Then, I have a suggestion, then
I have,
why
I
don't we
have the
go,
answer.
pardon me?
I have the answer.
You don't know what the question was
I
yet?
have the answer to the other question, which was the original discussion. So if you take 58 acres, you divide it by, and I was generous in only dividing it by 3 acres per building, times the 103 apartments, the most you could get, and that's not taking into consideration roads, open spaces, just if the entire 58 acres was into apartments, it's 2010. So it's gotta be less than 2010.
Which is still a lot, but if I may, I mean, that was a conceptual thing put out by a consultant. And the developer is going to get the last unit you can get on a lot, so
They wanted
that may
to
not be,
using the
excuse me,
numbers
that may not be a realistic.
What
I mean,
we
that
would
makes
use.
sense. That may not be a realistic number. Well, what I was gonna say, if that's the only site that is presently available, I don't know if anybody agrees. I think this is a radical impact on the community. I think negative, some people may think positive. Why don't we look at doing that one site and see what happens there? And instead of doing this mammoth zone change that affects more directly 1 and 2 family homes in part of the area where it's being rezoned.
So that's a deliberation, I'm sorry, that's a deliberation question, so we can take that up when we get there.
Just a quick note on your calculation, we'd be talking about 6 stories, though, not 5 stories. Unless you have a commercial lot. So, but I agree with you that the number would be lower because of streets
Exactly.
and things like that.
Yes, so that's the maximum that you would probably have. And not everybody's gonna build 6 stories.
Right, and that also, that rough calculation, I think we
Yes.
understand that it's just finger.
No, I understand, it can't be exact.
Yeah, right, but taking someone else's comment from one of the prior editions of the public hearing into consideration was, I got a sense that there was this idea that if these zoning regulations were amended, in the way you're describing, that the city somehow would take down properties that exist, that, existing buildings that would, that you could take every one of those properties and fill up that whole area and build it to the maximum. And that includes, the current single family homes, that sort of thing. And I just want to make sure that it's understood that there's no power by the city to take, it's not like eminent domain. We're not taking property and building skyscrapers on it. Any of those individual properties would have to be for sale. A proposal would have to come in that would meet the technical requirements and all of those things. So but I think the finger math is useful to your question about what's the maximum impact. And,
Yes.
and I think we've come up with a calculation that, at least gets you in the zone in terms of, what the maximum could be.
Right, but we're not dealing with the city foreclosing or anything like that. We're talking about, you're trying to entice developers to come into an area to develop. And they're gonna do as much as they can, like Mr. Rice talked about, the same thing that happened at 5 Corners. Developers wanna maximize the amount that they legally can. Right, that's the important thing to understand here. So when you open up this Pandora's box, it falls on developers to do as they wish, and now you've got to answer to them. It's a
Actually,
complicated question.
actually, that's not a fair representation. The reason that we put in the language about anything over 4 stories would have to be a special permit it would have to have a public hearing just like this. And that's why we did it.
I could bring you court cases in Connecticut on special permits where they've been reversed and they had to allow the developer to build. It's not cut and dry, believe me, special permits. That's why you should have the advice of an attorney.
And you're right, in fairness to your comment earlier, though, was entered into the record. So
So
whatever, in fairness to your comment, just, to amplify your comment from earlier, whatever boundaries that we set by the zoning regulations, a proposal, you made the point earlier that, a proposal comes before the commission, and, if the commission, denies a permit based on, whatever consideration the commission uses, and, it could be appealed on the basis of, having more technical, space to fill, right? If we said, okay, it's too big, well, but it still meets the requirements. So if we make boundaries, we may be held to allowing things to fill those boundaries. So that's part of the deliberation is consideration of, how reasonable the boundaries are. So that's why we're taking these comments of it.
Right.
But along the lines of what you're saying, I mean, a special permit doesn't give the commission a whole lot of ability to say no. It's a fairly constrained type of review. And, in all honesty, no one's gonna come in with an
Why would you
application.
suggest that the people come in and do the
Nobody,
special permit?
excuse me, let me finish. And nobody, I think, in all reality, is gonna come in with an application for 4 stories. I mean, you're gonna have applications for 6 stories. I mean, it's fact of
I
life.
think that we need to. I think it's a big mistake to make categorical comments like that, because that depends upon a developer, it depends upon what they're trying to do. It depends on the building code, which, by the way, makes a distinction between when buildings get to 5 and 6 stories in terms of the cost of construction and the type of construction, whether it's wood or steel. Those are things that are far beyond the realm of this commission, but were considered when this draft was initiated. So this isn't just, we're just gonna put 2 more stories on top. That isn't how building works.
It also depends on the market. I mean, you have to have renters.
Hey, I've done this for 45 years and okay, I take back 100%, but almost 100% are gonna apply for 6 stories. I'd
We're
be surprised.
dealing in a
I'd be
place that is
surprised, I'd
very
be
different
surprised
than
if you ever see
Connecticut.
anything other than that.
All right, so this is, we're not making any headway. Let's get through
Okay,
it.
so to finish up, here, there was a question from Mr. Boucher about, slide 5. Can the commission explain how they hope to achieve the missing middle or scale development? Missing middle is the idea of progressing from single family areas to taller spaces. You have to start somewhere. And so there are buildings along Upper Thames Street that are taller than single family buildings. That was sort of the beginning point. The Hoops building, for instance, and the other building adjacent to it. And they're there already. Okay, so they're there at 3 and 4 stories, I believe.
are we talking about the state police barracks? So we
No. No,
So we're talking about the west side of things.
correct.
Oh, okay.
But the answer is we need to start somewhere. So we started with buildings that were already higher than single family buildings and looking to move from there.
Can I just, one quick comment?
Wait, can I just read
No, that's fine.
the
Read
next question? The issue of sense of place and village district. These are, and the historical character. The historical character is within Groton Bank. Again, that is not an area that is being, the zone is not being changed for that area. That is not the proposal.
I'm just gonna comment quick. There are at least 3 homes on the National Registry of Historic Places for the Groton Bend Historic District. Already pointed this out with Keith, so you are including historic homes nationally recognized within your boundaries right now. Broad Street and Thames Street,
Broad Street is not included.
yes, you have a property on Broad Street, you do, right across from Bailey House.
The, across,
It
across the
goes up,
street, I'm
it goes
sorry,
up
yes.
Broad Street,
Across the
yes,
street,
right,
and
that, those homes are,
8-unit building,
no, I'm just saying, those homes are included in the National Registry of Historic Places for the.
and there are 8 units in that building.
I'm just correcting you, you had homes that are listed on the National Registry there.
Okay, I was not referring.
No,
to
no,
the
that's-
National Register.
And it's right next to the historic district.
And
Okay.
it has 8 units in it.
It's not just that home, there's 2 other homes.
We understand the concern.
Okay, no, but I'm just.
We got it.
We
I'm
got it.
correcting the message here.
We got it.
Okay,
You got it. You made your point. You reinforced it. We got
okay.
That,
it. There's the,
that. Okay, I think that's all I have.
in terms of questions, yeah, I don't see anything else. All right. We're through the introducing the exhibits. All right, moving on to Leslie, anything else you want to add before we move to the public comments? Okay, all right, so anyone from the public want to speak in favor of the application?
I like this chair better. My name is Priscilla Jonah. I'm gonna spell it out Presila. DJONAJ.
Go back to Priscilla.
Presila.
Okay.
GJONAJ.
J-O.
NAJ.
Thank you.
150 Bridge Street. Yeah, so it's my second time speaking in this meeting, and it's, I think, the 3rd meeting if my memory doesn't fail me. And a lot of the comments here have been on the procedure, and I honestly think we're in the 3rd meeting and we're probably gonna go in the 4th one, and everybody's questions are being addressed. So I really don't understand the hang up on the procedure, on the appropriate amount of time that something should have posted and all that. This is almost 4 months now. I have a 3-month-old at home, and this is older than that. So, but yeah, just to reiterate my, and to reintroduce myself. So we have a property at 150 Bridge Street, and I wanna kind of address, because from the comments last time, I noticed that there is this sinister idea or this plot that something is going on and some strange developer is coming and building something that hideous and all that. You have business owners here that already own those plots, and we already have invested and improved those areas. And it is our interest to see the area develop better. This is literally not just maximizing on doing like a high density housing, because there already is high density housing in the Groton town. You have a lot of apartment buildings and all that. I want to say what I personally am interested in seeing in that area, and that is a mixed use buildings, similar as you would have, for example, in Mystic. Everybody, I know people here mentioned that nobody wants to visit Groton. People will go to other shoreline towns and Old Seabrook and all that. Why cannot Groton be that? This is why we're here. And all these negative comments, I really, like, they were very passionate. I was very taken aback last time, speaking so passionately in opposition to this, and I really, if there was that much passion, like a fraction of that, in actually doing something to improve things, the city would not be in the condition it is right now, because all of these people speaking
Excuse me.
against,
Please, be polite. All right,
yeah.
please finish. No, not you.
Yeah, all of the people speaking against, I understand the concerns, and we're here to maybe improve the amendment and make it exactly what we envision it to be, but to actually just oppose it and say this is an absolute no, it's unrealistic, and it really makes me question your motives and maybe your understanding of what is really going on in here. And so as I mentioned, my interest is in seeing the mixed use buildings in Bridge Street, and also the area where it goes into Thames Street, which would really go in line with the shoreline town that everybody wants to have, and all the property owners here that are concerned. I understand your concern. Obviously, if something hideous builds in there, it's not good. Whatever is there now, it's not good either. So we're here to actually improve it and make it so that even your property will be more valuable. That's all there is to this. And I really hope that in the comments that are gonna come, you really address the application as it is, instead of these hypotheticals that could be going on. And I'm also a math buff, so on the question of how many units, obviously, if it's 58 acres and they're all together, you can build them in units, but if they were all split into a half-acre plots, then you could not build not even like 100 units. You could do the math on that. I like to do math. And last consideration, Mr. Rice, you just said, I mean, it really struck a chord with me, because I have been through the special permit application process before, and you mentioning here that a special permit does not really have much power to do anything, meaning that anything that can come in front of the committee, it will just get approved. I think that's a really bad misrepresentation of the process itself. And if you suggest that, then why are we even here having this conversation and taking the input of the residents, when a developer could come in and say, I'm gonna build 500 units and do a special permit and have all the requirements, and you are saying that you would have no power to say no to that.
If they comply with the standards in the statute, then you have to say yes, and there's very little play in the joints, and that's what the case law is. I don't know what your experience is, but that's what the case law is.
So why don't we design the regulations of the zoning to attract what we want to attract, what people want to see here? When, as you just said it again, somebody can come in, have 3 adjacent lots, say I want to build 500, already has parking requirements. We'll build the 6 floors or whatever is there, and the public cannot even have an input on that, because as you mentioned, if they have all the requirements, it probably will get approved. So that's my comment on that. And I know I've been following this process now for a few months. I know that there was a lot of discussion, even if you wanted to bring this process in front of the public or not. And I remember that you were not in favor of actually bringing this to even be discussed. So I just wanted to mention that for the record. Yeah, that was all my comments. I really appreciate your work. I think we can make this better if the public has suggestions as for the building height. I think there could be some compromise there. I wouldn't be against that. Again, my vision, and I think, I mean, based on the POCD, and I think the people that are in here, everybody wants to see this area developed for the better. So let's do something about that instead of just being loud and saying no and attacking the committee members or Leslie. I just think there is nothing good will come out of it. It's just a waste of time for all of us here. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in favor of the application? Yes, sir.
My name is Mahmoud Tandogan. I'm the co-owner 115, 121, 123 Peconic Road. I'm strongly supporting this resolution.
Could you spell your
It's
name?
gonna be, excuse me,
Could you spell your name, please?
Mike Alpha Hotel, Mike Uniform Tango. Last name is Tango Alpha November Delta Oscar Golf Alpha November.
Somebody who knows the code.
I'm
Very
gonna
simple.
Mike Tango.
Very strong supporting anything improve the city of Groton.
Thank you.
It will
Thank
be
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka.
Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application? All right, anyone want to speak in opposition to the application?
Nobody else is speaking. Anybody else want to go? All right.
Okay, 5 minutes,
I
Mike.
could talk, yeah, I know, I could talk for half an hour.
Yeah,
About
just,
long.
we got 5 minutes.
Name and address, Mike Boucher, 16 Hillside Avenue, Groton, Connecticut. In support of Commissioner Rice's comment about tapes are definitely not kept long enough in the city of Groton. GU.
On the application, please, focus on the
It is,
application.
it is part of the
That's
application.
not-
We're talking
that's-
about recording.
That's not part of the application. Please stick to the application.
You're narrowing my comments, but let that be noted.
Well, I'm perfectly willing.
All right. Same thing, gonna narrow my comments here. Five Corners was developer push, that's why I'm cynical about this. Clearly one FOI, the emails between the city and the developer, the developer made request and planning and zoning fit what the developer wanted. We have somebody trying, I don't know if somebody's trying to fit, but the same scenario is happening now. We're creating a fit for development. And nobody knows what's happening behind the scenes. I've FOI'd it. I hope you guys are doing your job.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know, FOI's taking a long time. The modification of zoning regulations must command the highest public confidence. Since zoning regulations, restrict limits of personal free use of real estate for the public good. We have repeatedly held that anything that tends to weaken the public confidence is against public policy. That comes out of Connecticut law. If a zoning authority member fails to disqualify himself despite a conflict of interest, the action of the authority in which he participates is invalid. Something else to consider. Robert, I don't want to go through the whole thing, but you got the total email, correct? About all the properties listed. So it's fairly extensive. It's something that should be considered. There's also similar case law in the state of Connecticut, considering not exactly what Mr. Rusk is involved in, but similar. One concerns planning and the other concerns, obviously, it's development, planning development. The other concern is to be on a planning and zoning board and voting for something. And basically that's what you're doing. You're working for the Economic Development Commission, coming up with ideas. Back in January, you already mentioned this bit. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
We have it. We have your message.
It's just for the benefit of,
We have
So,
your email
is
in
that-
the record.
are you guys gonna talk about it all that or just?
We'll address that when we get to deliberation.
All right,
It's a deliberation question.
thanks.
Thank you. All right, anybody else want to speak in opposition?
Just first, I'd like to correct Ian Thomas's address. It's not Ave, it's 24 Jefferson Drive, just to make sure it's incorrect. My name is Portia Bordelon. BORDELON PORTIA, 24 Jefferson Drive in the lovely city of Groton, Connecticut, Mystic, town of Groton, Noang. Quarter here, GLP. It's all one, in my opinion, in the sense that we all work together. This is a very important topic to me as a person who lives and resides in the city. It's not about the whole draft. It's about pieces of it. When I drive through downtown Mystic or down other towns I spoke about, They have no more than 4 stories on that main road. It blocks the sun out, and they made it look as historical as they can. Having a caveat in here that states that you're willing to allow any developer, you all may not be here. Tomorrow's not promised. We don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know that we are even gonna be sitting here as the elected bodies that we choose to sit on currently that are making these decisions. That's why it's the proof is in the pudding and making sure that your dialogue is in the writing, because people are hearing impaired and it's a disability as well. Legally, you need to make sure that people can read it, see it, hear it, write it. If these videos were to go away, you guys are saying, oh, we're gonna keep them for a year. You're saying that. When someone else is in your seat or your seat chair, are they gonna abide by those rules? 30 years from now, when my grandchildren choose to live here, they're gonna wonder why the heck is a 6-story building down here? They're not gonna be able to find the notes. So it's great that you guys have a caveat and say, oh, the person will have to come back to this body. Might not be your body, might not be my body, right? To back to this board and they can ask for a grace for 2 more stories. Why would you leave such a vague variance open-ended that you may not be around? Do you really want 6 stories down here on Thames Street? I'm all for economic development, all for it. And it should have been done 40 years ago. As a person who's lived here for 44 years, I'm embarrassed, disgusted at the look and the quality of Thames Street from the lack of development in this town. So it's not to be against something because I'm against development. Yet I'm for proper, feasible, environmentally friendly development that fits the tapestry of our community and the future of our generation. Do I want an ugly 6-story building on Thames Street? No. Do I want affordable housing? Yes. The city has a problem with housing. Branford Manor, 400 people live in a congested area, and no one should know that they're low income. I would hope that you guys also look at ways down the road to improve that quality on another body. I do have concerns about the openness. The one meeting on the economic development, Jason Rusk is not on it. I came to a town meeting. The mayor says, nope, he's no longer, he verbally resigned. I said, where's the written? He didn't. So is he on? Is he off? Is he on? Is he off? If you watch multiple meetings, it's confusing. You can't, on one thing, lock someone up as a cop and then the next day be that person's prosecutor. It's not fair. I'm not saying that this man is not doing a fine job as commissioner. I commend you for wanting to be on 2 boards, but we have to make sure it's fair and equitable. Equitable. That's fair and transparent. And I asked Jason, Commissioner Rusk, to recuse himself because of this. I think it's only right. You cannot be making decisions of what you want to see, then turning around and sitting in this seat, this body, and saying, all right, let's cut that zoning. I want 6 stories. I want to see trees here. It's not fair. It's not just. It's not right. To the comments about, Mrs. Bergerson, stated, oh, well, let's talk to the mayor.
1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. You guys are put in this position from the mayor. Is that correct? He makes the decision to seat you?
No, the city council makes.
No, the city council, but driven by the mayor. Is there minority representation on this board either? I mean, there's only a few people. I know that the city, mayor is a Democrat, but he appoints overwhelmingly Republicans. But the point is, we have a problem here. We have a problem that needs to be addressed. I think the idea is wonderful. I love what the former mayor of the town stated, Mr. Ofinger, who has a lot of experience, stated, throw this out, come back to the drawing board. I just want to say I commend Commissioner Rice. He is an asset to this board. He knows his stuff. He's done his homework. He's done his research. And the way that you guys shut him down is unbelievable. Are you guys all here working for Keith, the mayor, as it was stated, or are you here for the people who pay the taxes that allow this town to run? Change needs to happen. You need to listen to your constituents. Again, I'm speaking as a taxpayer and not a counselor. I urge this body to go back to the drawing board and make it right. It's a great idea to develop it, but you have to make sure it's proper and fits. Random things just thrown in there in no way benefits our community. Let's speak up. Come on, think about this in 20, 30 years. You might not be here, but you want better for Groton.
We got it.
And for the record, got it. And Paul, I'm disgusted by your rudeness and the way, as a chair, that you run your meetings and treat people with no dignity or respect.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in opposition to the application? Or attack me?
Well, how does it feel? You treat people like crap. Talk down to us.
That's rude right there.
It doesn't bother me.
I know it, we don't.
It doesn't bother me. Anyway, does anyone else want to speak in opposition to the application?
Resign if you don't like it.
It doesn't bother me. No one else? Anyone want to speak neither in opposition or Mr. Olslinger? Former town manager Olslinger?
Yeah, I didn't know if I got promotions or anything.
I don't know.
You had good ideas.
So I'm gonna try to take the hot, Mark Offinger, 201 Broad Street. My wife and I have been at both the December and the January meeting. And I'm gonna try to take the high road. I do commend the commission and staff for looking at this area. I think there's a lot of potential in this area. We live right in it. We have a bird's eye view of a lot of what is going on and unfortunately a lot of what's not going on. And would love to see something good happen. Personally, I am not concerned about 4 stories or 6 stories. I raised in previous comment, my sense is, you know, having worked for a developer at one point in my career, some developers like to work with wood, and some of them like to work with steel. And that's going to be the deciding point on whether or not something is 4, 6, or 7 stories tall. Height issues are not a concern. Having said that, from my standpoint, having said that, I think there's some pretty simple ways that the commission and staff could have shown those of us who have been coming to the public hearings what a 6 or a 7 story looks like. And I guess the bulk of my comments are going to be, I just think it's unfortunate. I've been doing this type of work my entire career, both as a planner and then as a public administrator. And I would dare say most people sitting behind me at this meeting and other meetings are concerned, they don't trust what's going on. They may not even be against the actual proposal, but I think the way this has been rolled out and how the commission has reacted to folks, the minutes, the fact, I've never seen minutes done like this in my life, ever. And I've been to hundreds, if not thousands of meetings. I don't get it. We sat here for an hour and a half, waiting to get to the public hearing to basically read back. That should just all be written down in the minutes and just captured a little bit, in my humble opinion. I don't know how you're gonna get through this. My recommendation is still that you deny the application without prejudice and start over again.
Yes.
And start with calling a meeting with the residents in the general area, so you can kind of lay out what it is you're trying to accomplish. I'm in favor of that. I just think I'm a process person. This process has been horrendous. There's not too many in the public sector. There's not too many, in my opinion, too many absolute rights and wrongs. It's all how you get there. And how we've gotten to this point tonight, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and I would ask the commission to reflect on that, because I think a lot of the folks that have concerns, their concerns are heightened. Every time we have a public hearing, the concerns seem to be increasing because of not so much the proposal, but how things are not being addressed. So once again, I commend you for looking at this area. I hope, I truly do hope that I would, even though you could probably go ahead and approve this, I think you're going to be losing a lot of residents in the community. And it's just going to morph into people coming out when individual proposals come forward, and people are going to continue to raise the same concerns, and it would be good. These are the rules by which developers have to operate under. And it would be best, you don't want to have a developer have to deal with a lot of comments that are better dealt with at the zone amendment time. In terms of you're not doing them a favor. They may think you're doing them a favor. Thank you, Paul. But it's better to work this stuff out up front. I don't think you need 3 meetings to do it. I think a lot of the comment and even some of my I've said it before, and I apologize, I don't like doing that. But I almost feel like because I didn't write an email, I need to get up tonight and kind of repeat some of the stuff I've said before. I think it's a good initiative. I just think the way it's been kind of rolled out has been unfortunate, and the way people have been dealt with at the various public hearings has been unfortunate. So I thank you for your time.
Thank
Anybody else?
Double check if anybody on Zoom wants to do it.
Anybody on Zoom?
Over there, Paul. Oh,
If you're on. If you're on Zoom and would like to comment, just raise your hand or unmute yourself and make a comment at this time.
Never has said anything.
No.
Okay, so Kimberly, is that a hand raise? Can you?
No, that's, oh, sorry, that's.
Oh, that's your hand.
No, so it doesn't look like anything's coming up on.
Okay, so nobody on the Zoom call? All right. Are we ready to close?
Can we ask some questions before or after?
Sure.
Yeah. Leslie, the last meeting, we had 3 Zoom names up there from GBU Capital, which I understand to be a recall from the Five Corners application was the applicant there. Have they been in contact with the planning department about any type of application here? Because they were in attendance at the last meeting.
They have not.
They haven't spoken to at all.
I have not spoken to anyone from there or any of their consultants.
Because it's strange, I don't know how they would have known about the meeting from the notice, because I don't think it was adequate. Or maybe this is more of a recommendation. I have alluded to it before. But I think there's 3 changes that need to be made in the zoning, in the zoning regulations before any type of amendment that would increase density should be allowed.
Do you want to do this?
Pardon me?
Do you want to do this in the public hearing, or do you want to do this in deliberations?
It's not gonna take me long, I'll just do it now. I think that, first of all, as I mentioned before, I mentioned it when we had the hearing on the Five Corners, because the reason I voted against that was because the developer wouldn't put in any open space or recreation areas, and I was told we couldn't compel it, so but that we could amend the zoning law to do that. So I think before we ever consider anything like that, so we're not in the same situation again, the zoning regulation should be amended to allow the commission to require the set aside of open space or parkland or recreation on the development, or require the payment of money in lieu. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same situation again.
This draft of regulation has an open space requirement.
Say again?
This regulation draft has
Well,
an
it's
open space
not
requirement.
directly. I mean, you have a
Has-
limitation on the development coverage, but you don't have anything that requires playgrounds or recreation land.
That becomes something that is in fact up to the developer, but
But if we
Go
amend
ahead.
the zoning law, it's not, and
then
that's a mistake, I think, to leave it up to the developer. Otherwise, we're gonna get back to the same situation as Five Corners. Secondly, the fact that somebody can apply for and get approval, site plan approval for a 4-story building without a public hearing, I think is crazy. I feel sorry for the person who wakes up one morning and there's a shovel going in the ground next door, and they say, oh, look, we're building a 4-story building, when they never had a public hearing. I think that the zoning law should require a public hearing on all site plan applications, subject to waiver by the commission, so we can say, okay, we don't need it on this one, it's really minor. I think that's really important before we go ahead with anything like this. And then the third thing that I've mentioned a bunch of times is the more recent provision in 8-2 of the state statutes that says we can't consider the character of the neighborhood, but we can if we have specific provisions in the zoning law. So I think that should be done before we have any type of amendments that would allow more density. Now, I did have a question. The zoning law says that if any portion of the property that's the subject of an application is within a shaded area identified on the most current natural diversity databases for Groton, you have to notify the commissioner of DEEP. And then also 22A-104, the state statutes implementation of municipal coastal program says that the commissioner shall be notified of any proposed municipal plan of conservation, development, or zoning regulations or changes before the commencement of those hearings if it's within the zone. Now, I looked at the map and it seems to me that the area you're talking about is in the area that would require notification. So I raised that as a potential issue. I don't know the answer, but it seemed to me that that was something that we should be concerned with. And the other
You're talking
thing,
about you're talking about the coastal management?
yeah. It seemed to me that it was subject to, but I'm not an expert in that at all. The only other thing that I wanted to do at this point was just put a couple of articles in just for the record describing the Groton Bank Historical District. So if we could just include them as exhibits to the matter. Thank you.
For the record, one of these is from Wikipedia, Groton Bank Historical District. And the second is also titled Groton Bank Historical District. It does not listing author that I can see, but I will add them.
And I'm sorry, there is one other thing I want to, I was never sent a copy of that PowerPoint, so I really didn't get a chance to examine it, but the report that was done in, I think, 2018, 2019, Building Connections, it has language on page 5 that the plans there would provide conceptual strategies, blah, blah. To that end, this plan has identified several strategies that have low barriers to entry. However, many of these strategies will require more in-depth study to understand exactly how they might be implemented. So to the extent that you're trying to tie this, in my mind, massive development into some improvements that are going to go on in Thames Street, even this report indicates that there has to be more studies done. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment before we close the public hearing? All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing? Motion from Mr. Morris. For a second. Second from Ms. Bergeron. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Motion is approved 6-0-0.
You take 5 minutes.
Yeah, let me take a 5-minute break.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, I did actually ran up there, did a race marathon in the artist. What's that? No, ran.
Repeat that.
Back in session on 8:43. All right, so deliberations on the application. I mean, we've got a lot of public input that I think, deserves to be reviewed and probably incorporated into the proposal. So we can come back with something that, addresses the concerns that, the public addressed. That's, I think, I do think we're, I think directionally, we're doing the right thing. We're trying to leverage the growth at EB to help, bring in the population that we need to revitalize Thames Street, or to attempt to revitalize Thames Street. The recommendation from in the Thames Street study was you have to have people. You have to have people. And revitalizing, the report says, revitalizing and creating a more active Thames Street is dependent on more foot traffic. Residential growth is vital. Should be priority to create denser housing on Upper Thames and Bridge Street to support more households and associated foot traffic. That's right from the report. So I think, we're trying to do the right thing. It's I think we have had some, input from the community that we ought to look at and try to work into the proposal, into an updated application. Is that seems to be a reasonable approach to me. What do other people think?
I would tend to agree with that simply because we've received a lot of information, some of it is new, some of it has, been just regurgitated over and over again. So I think it would be good to look at the information we've received, the emails that we have, and look at a new application if needed.
Jim?
I guess from the beginning, I had my druthers about this. Right, when we added the 2 floors into the regulation, I had concerns about it. And I still have concerns about it. And I understand the area where we're at, and I understand we can't do spot zoning, so to speak. But one of the residents, Mr. Offinger, when he mentioned a specific area, I said, yes, something like that would fit in that particular area where the old roller skating is. Well, they also have concerns, having lived here all my life, with going beyond a physical feature in a location that I feel as a resident, right, it doesn't fit. Now, there are areas where it would fit, and the one that Mr. Offinger mentioned is probably one. But there are others that don't fit. And the concern that we had was we took a part of Thames Street from Broad Street north. And I think a lot of the public construed it as being all of Thames Street, which I would be completely opposed. And I'm hearing you, Paul, when you say, well, we have to have the development to get the people here to generate the walk-in traffic to revitalize Thames Street. I walked, up until a few weeks ago, I walked Thames Street every day. And I would walk anywhere from 6 o'clock in the morning till 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I can count on 1 to 2 hands how many people I saw walking to electric boat. And there are a lot of people in that general area, including the small condos down by the Cluster Park, as well as residents on the street. They're not walking. I can count on one hand the number of bicycles that I saw there. So yes, we have the thing with electric boat where they're gonna be bringing employees. And I hate to say it, but sometimes it almost appears like, and due respect, developers throughout New London County are embellishing upon the fact they're gonna hire 6,000 employees. And I've asked, and we have come down with another figure. Those 6,000 employees are not coming to live in Groton. They're not gonna be hired here all in Groton.
I agree.
They're gonna be hired in New London. They're gonna be hired at Quonset Point. Okay, those areas, so that's where they're gonna be there. The other thing, and we've had other developers that come in and say, everybody that's gonna go to work at EV is gonna move into my complex, my apartment building. They're not. If they're single, they may. But if they have a family, most people that have families don't want, they want a little house and they want a yard for the children to play with or play on, so I guess so. I think we should step back from that. I think my personal feeling where we made the mistake was adding those 2 stories. I think the public probably could have accepted the 4 stories with mixed development in certain locations, this specific location. But anything beyond that, so that's, I guess I'm playing my hand, but that's my suggestion that we go back to the drawing board.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I, I can understand everybody worried about 6 stories and, thinking it's gonna be everywhere, but, and I know people laugh when I say the building for EB has so many stories, but you can't see it. So what if it was a situation where it was a slanted piece of property, so that from the front road, you only saw 4 stories and they had more stories underneath? Would,
And I see what you're talking about, right? With electric boat with I guess that's a 10-story building. Yes, 10 floors, because I remember working there. And it does slant all the way down.
yeah,
But what surrounds it? Parking lots, not residential homes. So it doesn't affect those residential people. And we'll take a look at the new building that they just constructed for the Columbia building submarine. I think even Electric Boat realized this is a big building. This is going to affect those things. So they went to the residents across the street and said, we'll buy your properties. Because they knew it was going to affect their way of living. So that one, I don't know if you were on planning as well when that happened. I wasn't.
Actually, I was.
no, I wasn't.
And when you say, I don't anticipate, and it was discussed, the amount of property you need to construct such a building, we don't have that available right now. Although, and we've discussed this, some of the elephants in the room were the 2 or 3 people, property owners that own a large amount of property out there. Okay, that are connected. I can speak of 3 people or 3 property owners that
People
own,
are connected or the properties are.
the properties are the nexus. No, the nexus of the properties.
Right, if
All
they
right.
own adjacent.
Yeah,
they've
they own
assumed
enough where
adjacent
they
property.
could. They
Yes.
could do something like that.
Yes.
And I don't know the answer to it. All I know is I've listened to the public. And the public, that's what we're writing this for. It's for our citizens, our public. I know the developers come in, but now they're part of our public, they're part of our community. When they do that, so I'd like to take a step back and And, you know, I respect everybody on the commission for their own thoughts, but that's my thoughts.
Oh, I'd just like to comment, the one thing that I think is kind of unfortunate that, and, the characterization that were we to pass this, that all of a sudden you would have 2,400 units or whatever, is really manipulative to the public. That's not what we're discussing here. It's not feasible for that to happen, you know, were we to say yes or no on that. It's just, you know, we're trying to figure out ways that fit into the community. And, you know, there were a lot of good comments about scale that are important, but we have a few activists that have come here and are very good at presenting the arguments like that. And we need to remember that we have the entire city that we are deliberating for, not just the individuals who, the same set of individuals who write the emails or give their presentations here. They're important as well, but there is a larger context here. And in that larger context, I think there's the impetus of why we're deliberating this. We're trying to figure out a way to create some growth and to incentivize local developers or national developers to invest in our community to help with the housing crisis that is statewide. Retirees, it's not just EV, it's our young people, it's our affordable, it's you know, across the board. So I just want to make this statement as we're deliberating, because I think it just got a little skewed. There's some good points about why this approach needs to be looked at, but this is an important thing for us to consider. You know, we've been asked by the state and by other members of the community and to look at the housing issues that are systemic at all, not just the missing middle, all this area, and create an availability for young people to have apartments or to have a sense of place, a destination. And one last thing I'll say, and this is just my own particular pet peeve, it's not catering to electric boats so much, it's trying to create housing that, you know, appeals to a demographic starting your career. I mean, some of this stuff has changed just drastically because of so many things systemic in our country, but you know, when I was younger, I could afford stuff, and younger people can't do that now. So if there's ways that we create areas like this that can offer an idea, this is some creative people that come in that want to make an investment, that can figure out some housing mix that allows them to make money for their investors, make an investment in our community and create some of this housing stuff. I think that that's what we're after. So I don't know that I said anything particularly controversial on it. I just thought I thought it necessary to say it after listening to everybody that, you know, this is our job to have these tough discussions and to look at this stuff, you know, and we all won't necessarily agree on all the changes and things, but this is an important part of what these discussions need to happen. So I'm glad we're having it and appreciate being part of it. And I appreciate everybody's dialogue, even the activists that come out, they're an important part of it. But just remember, there's a whole city out there and there's a lot of people that, you know, have a lot of interest in, you know, we need to consider. All that.
Can you please be labeled as a counselor or taxpayer, not activist, please?
But thank you.
I think people need to look outside the box. I mean, your comment is absolutely true. Okay, EB may be moving into these apartments right now, but as they get older and start having families, then they're gonna start looking for houses because they like it here. And those people who are looking for houses are gonna help us retirees who are looking for apartments. So it's gonna be a continual circle. So you know, people are saying, oh, well, once EB's gone or EB's not hiring anymore or laying off, there's gonna be nobody in these apartments. Well, guess what? People will, that circle of life. So I agree with you.
And that's one of the things too. I've heard comments, people have said, well, what about, you know, EB only has 20 years of contracts. I mean, a POCD is 10 years. We can't alienate a young generation by having things change, people adapt, buildings get repurposed all the time. It's part of the process of this stuff. So yes, there needs to be responsible discussion about what will fit in the community, what is appropriate, listening to the neighbors and things, but we can't get ourselves, we're not designing 100 years buildings here that can't ever change. Things will repurpose. There wasn't the internet, now we're in the internet age, people are working from home and we can't know what it's gonna be 40 years from now. So, again, I'm just glad we're having the conversation and I think it's important and,
Thanks. Jason, anything you want to say?
Yeah, this is my first go around with the build up to a public hearing like that with this body. I wasn't around for Five Corners, so I've been a little bit along for the ride in terms of the last stages getting into the public hearing piece. I mean, we've met over the last year and we've taken small bites, we've looked at best practices, we've been presented, pages of proposed changes. I don't think that we've looked at it from a 10,000-foot view at any point. I think we've focused on little bits and pieces. We've talked about parking and unit size and building height. And all that was fine, in little stages, but then suddenly it was kind of coming to a head where we were gonna put it to the public. And I confess that I wasn't sure exactly how the presentation piece would be put out. And I didn't, I confess, I guess I didn't ask, how exactly we were prepared to do it. I thought public hearing that we would lay it all out, and we'd get to answer questions. We have been steeped in, the last 12, 14 months or whatever it's been of discussing these detailed points, and some things we brought up, we've nixed it, we said, no, that doesn't belong, and we've gone back and forth. So, I guess I thought that opening the doors, we'd lay it out, we'd get good feedback. We would make it, informed decisions from there. And so, I mean, all of us put forward this set of proposed amendments. But I don't know that we were all necessarily hardcore about every single detail. And I'm not speaking for anybody, but I understood the point to be, let's get this out, let the public comment, see where the energy is, and go from there. Because we would have this deliberation stage and the opportunity to take the feedback and say, they like this, they didn't like this, I mean, that's, but just being transparent, I think that, a lot of the energy has come from the way we presented. And I think if we're honest, I think we were caught off guard in having the information readily available. And then we got caught into the back and forth of the two-way conversation with the public hearing piece. And I think we could have been better prepared for that dialogue. So it just, because we got a lot of good points and substantive feedback that I think we should be taking on board. And I think there was extra energy because of the way we rolled out the information. And I'm culpable just as everyone else is about that. I don't know that, I don't think we really kind of fleshed out how it would look or how it would be presented. And I made some assumptions, and we were kind of called on it. And I think we need to take that back.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So, my recommendation would be that we take a step back, that we have the application, that we, there are a lot of fine points here. in the proposed amendment. We don't necessarily have to throw them all out the window. But I think we take what we came with, and we can take the feedback we got. And we change it. And then, you know, when we bring it back to the public and say, look, you know, in a very demonstrative way with, you know, all the feedback we've got about, this is what a computer generated image looks like. If you live on Church Street, this is what it looks like. Not that it- yeah, I got it. But, you know, if your backyard was, and now 5 feet plus a, still stimulated, or it can't, or whatever, right? And I just think that we may have fought through some of those things and resolved those concerns in our own minds, but I don't know that we, or I'm convinced by the feedback that we didn't get that word out. We didn't catch everybody up to where we were in as well as we could have. And so I think we inspired a lot of that energy in doing so.
Called it an airstrike in our own position, did we?
Yeah, I think you can put it there. Feedback, a lot of the feedback was well deserved.
Aaron?
Thank you. I just want to answer something Robert said. You know, I put the figures out there, and it's not manipulative. The point was, as I tried to illustrate through the whole thing, is we don't know. There's nothing to substantiate anything. So yeah, you do the math. That's what the math says, but where are the reports saying, well, how many units are feasible and so forth? I mean, it's not an answer. And you see, the public was not happy with. I don't know. How do you and go down the line with something like this? With I don't know. You can't. And the other thing I want to say is, yeah, we obviously are here to serve the entire city, but when you're dealing with a zone change or any type of intense development or anything of this magnitude, it's the people that are right next door that are most affected. So, I mean, those are the primary people. And you saw them come out. And you know what? It wasn't because of the notice in the newspaper or anything else. It was because somebody went door to door in that neighborhood and got people out here. So, I mean, that kind of dovetails with what Jason said and Jim said too, that the way the process was handled was terrible. The people don't trust what happened here. It looks like there's some type of backroom deal going on here, and it just unfolded terribly. I think the comments that I have all along here is, if you want to do something, you gotta have the backup to do it. You have to have, first of all, you have to see what the demand is. I mean, you've got a ton of multifamily units here, and we speculate there's a demand. We don't know there's a demand. We speculate that if you build some unit that's going to do something for Thames Street, that's speculation too. But we don't know. There's no reports. And I went through the litany of stuff that I think you should know before you even consider something like this. So I agree with what Jim and Jason said here, that I think we just ought to scrap the damn thing. And then let's talk about what and where, instead of this blunderbuss type of thing that rightfully gets people upset. I mean, if I lived in the streets overlooking this, if I had a home adjacent to this, if my views of the river was going to be blocked by this, I'd be pissed, and rightfully so. So I think we got to look carefully at where, and we got to look carefully at what, and I think we have to have the homework done so that we can say what the likely impacts are.
Just to make sure I'm not mischaracterized.
Okay.
I didn't mean to throw the whole thing out.
I think we should deny it and then go back and start looking at it.
I agree. I think that the feedback, I think our process ought to be to look at the salient points that were brought up and to see where we can either some changes the geography of the zone that we're looking at changing, and or some of the specifics within the proposed changes. You know, heights and things. Frank Jeanette made a good point that, he's working, blood, sweat, and tears on the mother house. And to say, you know what, across the street, we could put a Whopper right there, and next to what we've just been working on. I think we got to make some changes and still get
Himself, as you do as well. So I am locally impacted by this development. And, big numbers like that are manipulative. We don't know what's there. So yes, you're right. It could be bigger than a bread box, but one thing that's important, I think, in this dialogue, wherever we come down, whether we're denying and picking it up, we have to be careful at this level of stoking the fire of inflamed passions here. This is a serious issue, and we're trying to find areas in our community and also that are amenable to creating, incentivizing zoning changes that will create housing and opportunity for our young people, our retirees, and everybody else. So I didn't mean to say that you purposely are doing that. I'm just saying we need to be careful with our dialogue here at this. We're all residents here. We all want to see the best of it. We don't want to portray our community as not in our backyard. Yeah, we need housing, but not here. Like, this is a serious deliberation. And for that reason, there's some good points you made about the process could have been a lot better. There's some great comments about that. But the situation still stands. We need to find ways and areas and the right mix of zoning regulations that can promote a healthy, sustainable community where people have access and the ability to have homes and thrive and participate. It just cannot be enclaves of wealthy individuals who don't want housing in their area. You have to ask these difficult questions. And this is one of the areas that it's there. So let's just say, I'm a process person as well. Let's really stick to facts about stuff. And, I'm not saying, but he's not, I'm just saying it's really important, maybe not this moment, but we do need to continue to figure out ways on our boards and commissions and POCD to address systemic housing issues, access. So that's what we're doing here. And just, again, it's not as simple as just defeating something and walking away, delaying it. I mean, these have been historic tactics to not ever have anybody. This is how redlining started. I mean, we have to be aware of what we're addressing here, okay? Kicking the can down the road benefits everybody who already has a house here and is comfortable. I'm not saying that necessarily these discussions here don't mean we should readdress these issues, but I'm just saying I'm uncomfortable a little bit with just sort of brushing our hands on this. Let's dig into this. Let's have some actual ideas about how to make it better, and let's take some action on it and see if we can't get motion on that rather than another year go by.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that we're kicking it a year down the road. I think that at our next meeting, now that, I feel I've been kind of shackled by the public hearing, we've almost been like a sequestered jury. Once we started it, we couldn't talk about it. So this is the first opportunity we've had to react to the, in my opinion, well-deserved public face punch on some of the issues. And then take that back to the drawing board and work through it. There were, like I said, I confess, unknown unknowns that in terms of feedback that we got that I didn't anticipate. And I've got a hell of a lot of notes here, on good points and and kind of out to lunch points, suggestions of things that just you throwing comments out there that don't have basis. We sift through those. We get to the points that are substantive, and we dig in and we try again. And I don't think we have that far to go. I just think we have some things we can do to the existing package. And then we work out a way of presenting it, knowing what we know now about how it's received, that we can present it in a better way.
So can I just ask, so that we don't have to go back to square one? Is it simply accept or deny, or is there another step where we can take what we have and massage it based off of comments and the different feelings about things we have now? Is there a, because if we start with square one again, it is gonna be a year.
I hear you. I mean, Paul, can weigh in on this, but our options are accept with conditions.
Mhm.
So if the only pushback from the public was 75 is too tall, we'd say, we'll accept it, we'll set the maximum height at 57 feet or whatever, right? We could do that. I contend there are a few more things for us to talk about, geography being one of them, the actual shape of the zone, being one of them. So I don't think we're in a place where we could just amend the motion and approve it tonight with a couple of conditions that we jot down. I don't think that's fair.
No, I'm just.
And I don't think it's good for the process either for the public.
Right.
So I think you gotta come up with something that the majority of the commission's agreeable with and have beat it like a dead horse and have the facts and figures and reports to substantiate it.
It's, to go along with both Terry and Jason. The idea, and again, trying to avoid the split zone, is to redraw the zone area where this could take place. And as far as what Bob is saying, you've got to have a gentle balance. There's a balance that has to be made that will satisfy the entire spectrum of our community. And I think, I don't see it taking a year. I think we have a very intelligent group here, and they should be able to discuss it, very.
We've been doing it for over a
I
year
understand.
already, so I mean.
But it wasn't just that one aspect, wasn't just the height thing
I
that we
agree.
discussed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Right? So when we worked everything out and the changes that the public zeroed in on was the height. So that's something that we should consider as far as
That's one of the.
And as Jason says, in the geography, where that's
Yeah.
has to be constrained, I think.
So in terms of how we handle what we're gonna do with the current application.
So you have a few options, okay? One is you could deny it. Another is you could accept it, approve it, you could approve it with conditions, or you could rescind it. It's your application. Remember, this application belongs to all of you. You all voted to put it forward. And so you can vote to rescind it if you want.
And what would be the time frame as far as if we rejected it to bring it back up again?
You would have to, if you were to, it depends on which way you reject it. If you deny it, you would have to deny it without prejudice in order to bring it up sooner. If you outright denied it, I think it's 6 months or a year. I would respectfully ask that you not do that.
Not too much.
That you not just out deny it. That if you were gonna deny it without prejudice, so that it could come back sooner.
Yeah, we've got a year, you can't come back unless, is that what it is? If you deny
I
it,
think
you have
it's a
the right.
year or.
But I think we have the right to deny it if it's, or not here, or if it's within a
You
year. but I don't
reach
think
the
it's a
exact,
prohibition.
you reach the exact same. It doesn't change what you reach if you deny it without prejudice, if you rescind it. Those two.
So those two give us the most flexibility to go back, rework it and bring it
Yes.
forward again. Is that correct? Is that?
And if we were to do that, we would again have public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's absolutely.
That's the important aspect.
You can't change the zoning
I
regulations.
understand that, but I just wanted to verify.
Where does the pause come from? what decides the span of time from a denial of prejudice or without. Because
Tools.
I don't know about that. We had a notification requirement where in advance of the public hearing, you had to, put it to the state and, there are various entities that had to be informed of the public hearing, of the application rather, before we got to the public hearing part. That I remember, but I don't know that,
Well, when an application is submitted like this, it has to go to the COG, and they deal with the state approvals. So all of that gets done at that level. It has to go, and it did go, to all of the entities. It goes to fire, it goes to, GU, it goes to the police, it goes to, we do that internally anyway.
right, but the COG notification and whatnot was, it was like a span of 45 days. It
Yeah.
wasn't 6 months to a year.
From the time that we submitted the application to when we had the first public meeting, I think it was 2 months, which would be the 45 days.
I think that's our timeline. I don't think it's some magic 6 months or a year unless.
Remember, somebody has to write this.
I hear you. But like I said, I don't propose that we put it in the shredder. I propose that we go line by line and
I
go,
think it's rescind.
this is what we want to talk about. This is fine as is. This is what we want to talk about.
Here's the, if I can, just the provision in the zoning law. 9.6.b, the commission shall not be required to hear a zone change application that has been rejected within 1 year from the date of rejection unless it finds on the facts in writing that a material change in the situation justifies the act. So it's your discretion.
Yeah, it just adds another complication to it, if you deny, right, that's the.
Not really, because it says it shall not be required to hear, so you had the option in any event to hear.
But then doesn't it say that you have to have a finding of fact that says the situation has changed?
No, it says shall not be required to hear, which means you can, unless it finds on other facts, then you'd be required to. So it's
As
a matter of
something
semantics.
that
Room
was
for a
found
lot
to be
more
that.
spaghetti.
Yeah,
I guess.
it would seem more straightforward to rescind it or to deny it without prejudice.
I think you should. Yeah, I think you should rescind it then. I don't think it should see it as sound equivocal to the public.
All right, so then let's then.
I move that we rescind the text amendment and the mapping amendment.
Second,
All right, so we'll get a motion from Jason. And second by Gary. To rescind. Any further discussion on motion to rescind the application? Anybody else thoughts other than what we already talked about?
Are we have discussion, can we have discussion now? Or because you called it?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor. It's seconded. This is the time for discussion.
Okay, so we were to do this. What is the earliest we could sit as a commission to review these specific areas that we want to discuss?
No,
Could we do it at the next meeting? Sir?
We can do it tonight.
Right.
We can
I
start.
think it's a little.
Can we?
No, we're not doing it tonight. That's-
Can we
Sarah, man, come up.
condition look, submitting another one? Like, can we tie it to, because I'm be frank here, my problem with this is how communities avoid tough problems and kick the can down the road. And if there's not any, I'm not necessarily saying this is correct, not the, there's good reasons why this has to be fixed. The problem here is it gonna get taken up in the next year? Are we just gonna not deal with the housing issue?
Well, I think you got a bunch of people here that are saying they want to talk about it.
All right, but we'd like, yeah, Groton Bank is beautiful. I'm grateful to be there. I'm very fortunate. But there are good areas right around there that aren't gonna be impacted by some change here. And unfortunately, without any commitment to have this process relaunched in a better way, it sends really shitty message to the community that no one's really interested in equity and inclusion and creating opportunity and dealing with any of these issues here. not here, not there, you know, so anyway, my point is, without getting upset about it, is I just think we need to remember that it's really an important issue on the table here. We need to figure out a way to tie, if we're gonna vote on that, to a commitment to getting a better proposal up in front of here that can be adopted, you know, in a reasonable amount of time with the appropriate public hearings involved, with the appropriate involvement with the community, but something that puts our feet to the fire to actually do something and involve people and not just
I completely agree with you.
ignore everything.
I completely agree with you. I think I would recommend that you rescind it. I will tell you that I have dedicated my entire professional life to writing regulations that do exactly what you're talking about. That make places better, that make places fairer, that make places look better, feel better, are safer. That is what I do. And so my recommendation is that you rescind it. I will meet with, my request also is because when push comes to shove, I'm the one who's writing this and I've written them before. I know what I'm doing. You've had 4 different sets of regulations before you in the last year. Okay, so what I recommend is that you rescind this application, that you also, each of you commit to putting in writing and sending to me what in this set of regulations you like, what you don't like, what you think should be changed, what you want more information on. What I can tell you also is that the fact of the matter is that Connecticut works in a certain way. It does not, and Terry, I don't mean this to be insulting in any way, but we are not New York. We don't have.
I've
the
never,
money.
I've never said you were.
Please, you don't like to be interrupted, neither do I. It is, we have different rules, we have different laws, and we are also an incredibly small municipality. We're 3 square miles with less than 10,000 people. We don't. I'm in for your planning department. Okay. I frankly am. This was not the best of the 4 that you looked at. So I don't have any problem rescinding this. Because I want it to be the best.
So how can we get, I mean, so the question is, will we rescind it? But then how do we get the ball rolling and making the required changes?
Go home and within the next week, send me an email that tells me what you like, what you don't like. And if you want to color code it and highlight it, and I don't care how you do it.
I would like to make a suggestion. I think the better way to handle it is if we sit down as a group. The 2 main issues are how big and where, and try and work through a consensus on that. And then we can go back to details along those lines. And what Jason said, I think is exactly right. I think we had the cart in front of the horse the whole time here. We were down there in the forest instead of looking at it from above, where nobody really talked about where or what, and we were looking at details. So I think that makes the most sense. And by the way, I'm admitted to practice law in Connecticut. I know the difference between New York and Connecticut.
But maybe we could get a little more clear on what are the, so we have the height issues and the boundaries, right?
Aren't those the biggest?
Are those the biggest points? But let's just get clear on this.
So,
My process nerd bundle is twitching right now. We have a motion on the floor, it's seconded, we're in discussion. But I think the discussion is steering towards what we want to talk about, how to go forward, not what we do with the motion on the floor.
Right, so
I think the next thing, if there's any more discussion about the motion itself, let's get it out, whether we are persisting with the motion to rescind. I think we should vote on that, and then we can go ahead with what's the next.
So the question is, in the motion to rescind, is there any way to attach action to reintroduce something at a specific time?
I think I understand your question.
Right? Is that, with that, and in that vein, then it was trying to discuss what are we agreed height and boundary? Are those, with those I guess maybe I'm acting too much. You're right.
Well,
Just-
like,
can we
like to
attach-
accept with conditions, I think it's.
Can we attach a
late
condition
to-
to reintroduce something?
I think you've got everybody's good faith here to do it at a reasonable pace, and I don't think putting constraints on us are helpful at all. I mean,
Constraints are in reintroducing something that maybe comes out of the process you discussed or something else that's not constraints. It just shows a commitment in our community to figure out something that works, not just say no and not do anything.
I would like to amend my motion. That we rescind the application before the commission at this time. With the commitment that we will immediately begin the process of revising the application
Second,
based on the feedback we received from the public.
that's exactly what I was talking.
Your point is well taken. And
Can you repeat that?
yes, ma'am. The amendment to the,
With commitment to,
right. We rescind the application before the commission with the commitment to immediately begin revising the application.
That's what I was asking if it could be brought up at the next meeting.
Yes. And to Terry's point, I think we think that that's the next thing to happen, but to Bob's point, we want to make sure that there's an ember under our backsides that we, that we have the motivation to move forward and we don't somehow allow ourselves, I don't think we would, but somehow allow ourselves to let this sit for a while. I think the energy's there, and I think that again, sorry, let's finish the motion first.
All right.
I'm well worse out of it here.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
who, did you,
And second, by Mr. Stricker.
you did the first though?
I did.
Okay.
All right. All set?
Yeah.
So, okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, motion is approved. 5-0-1.
I have a question that came up, about recusal. Do we have to address this? Because,
I can tell you what the rules are,
okay,
okay?
here's my concern. I don't, Mr. Boucher does his thing and that's part of how he behaves, but I'm not sure what Mr. Thomas is. Was he an individual that had said that what are the grounds upon which he said that I should do that?
There's,
And my concern is because he's an elected official, so if an elected official is making a comment about a commissioner, I'd like to understand what were the reasons why he would say that I need.
Sierra's gonna go grab the email and we can get you a copy of it, as well.
I've got it in front of me. I took the concern was about property that your family owns on Thames Street. So
But this is, I want to know specifically, Mr. Thomas's, because he's an elected official, doxing a commissioner is very troublesome. So I want to make sure before I address that is exactly what he
We'll
has
give
done.
you, we'll give you the.
Here it is. I have it.
I can speak to that real quick.
It's not,
I'm
we're
elaborating my
not, no,
capacity
this is not the
as an
time for
elected
that.
official,
He was reading as a taxpayer, not an elected official, speaking for the record.
city resident.
It's a misinterpretation.
This is, okay, so I want to be clear about what individuals, and we went through this with Five Corners as well. Individual commissioners are responsible for determining whether or not they have a conflict of interest and recusing themselves. No one can vote to have somebody recused. That's not how it works.
The chair cannot
That-
disqualify.
But I'd just like to point out that it's, the bullying of other commissioners by elected officials is outrageous. I've had both Mr. Thomas and Ms. Borderline in my home at 47 Beach Pond Road, okay? I'm very upset about this because like I said, this is an emotional issue. This is housing. This is a discussion here, putting influence on somebody and publicizing their, Mr. Thomas knows better than to do that. He's an elected official and I find it disgusting. And I'm glad you clarified that. he is actually one that has brought that up and discussed my personal information publicly. It's ridiculous.
And that's why we don't put it in the.
Yeah, but I want to bring it up because part of it is when the behavior isn't in the minutes, and this is one of the other arguments is that they get away with the bullying there, you know? If you don't agree, or it doesn't look like you're gonna take a position that a particular group likes, then everything's on the table, and it's reprehensible behavior. These are serious issues that we have to have in our community, serious discussions. And having an elected official dox members of commissions because they think that they maybe won't agree with them is reprehensible, and people should understand what's going on. Thank
All
you.
right,
Just want to add, just want to finish my thoughts so it's clear on the record. If somebody is serving on two different commissions, first of all, nobody is serving on two different commissions that are dealing with the law. And, you know, there are volunteer commissions that are actually committees or, you know, like EDC is not there is not a conflict between EDC and planning and zoning. In some places that does exist. Here, we have a cooperative relationship. It's not a one hand washes the other kind of thing. It is about each, this commission is doing its job based upon the enforcement of the zoning regulations and writing zoning regulations and approving them in line with best practices for planning and public health, safety and welfare and all the other buzzwords that go along with this that they teach you. The only person who can decide whether there is a conflict is the person themselves. It is best practice to say that somebody, you know, hold on one second. Am a volunteer on this commission and I'm a volunteer on this board or this committee that is somehow related. Jim has done it with the cemetery board. And he said, I'm on the cemetery board or I'm friends with the guy who runs the cemetery board, but I don't believe that will negatively influence my ability to be impartial. That's it. That's the end of it. That's all you have to do.
And I appreciate it. I understand how it works. The problem with doxing is that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is to put information out publicly in the record that distorts facts. And, you know, like I said, Mr. Boucher does that. That's his thing. He's not an elected official. When an elected official does that, I think there's an ethics issue there. So that's why I want to bring it up. I'm angry about it. It's upsetting to me. These are serious issues in our community, and we're all volunteers here trying to figure out how best to address them. And that behavior, that bullying is ridiculous.
all right, so we've got that, and then there was the other issue, the similar issue was raised about Mr. Rusk and the fact that he was on planning, zoning, and economic development, correct? That was the issue there.
Yeah, I think maybe there was a misunderstanding about the swim lanes that both of those groups participate in and how they don't actually cross each other. They both support the goal of improving the economy of the city, but in two completely different ways. So the Connecticut general statutes that were referenced basically proved my point. There is no conflict of interest between the City of Groton Economic Development Commission and the City of Groton Planning and Zoning Commission. None whatsoever. It doesn't bear weight. I think if we were talking about rezoning Thames Street, where you may or may not have a family member that owns property there, at that point, you would be obligated to recuse yourself from a vote based on, or at least disclose, just as I would if we were talking about rezoning the base of Baker Avenue where I live. I would have to disclose that, look, this is in my personal interest. It affects my view of the river or whatever. That's the expectation. If there's a personal or financial conflict of interest, those meet the definition. Personal might mean your own property. It might mean that of a family member or a friend or something. But I've got the same personal and financial stake in the zoning regulation amendments that every other citizen of this city has. We want to see Groton do better.
All right, thank you. Okay, so do we want to take a couple minutes to at least review the sort of the highlights of what we heard? I mean, I think it might be worthwhile in terms of, so what I heard from the public comments was a lot of concern about the height of buildings, especially if they're adjacent to existing residential neighborhoods, right? And that was east of Thain Street, south of Bridge Street, and west of North Street were the areas that seem to be of greatest concern.
Would you say that the locations again?
East of, the east side of, east
Well,
of
can you put
Thames.
this in writing to all of us tomorrow? maybe?
Sure, okay.
But you can go ahead and say them all.
Right, I mean, I'm just trying to get, just to
Yeah.
make sure we're all sort of on the same page. South of Bridge, right? And west of North, which is, that open space, part that's owned by the town.
Right.
Okay, those were the areas where we heard the most concern about the building heights, correct? There was the lack of the zoning that would encourage the missing middle. That was raised. I
Would
think
you
that's
repeat that poem? Sorry.
lack of zoning that would encourage the missing middle. So how do you get from the single family homes to the mid-density buildings? There was some concerns about the lack of a formal response about utility, police, and fire capacity to support the changes. We had informal information that was the case, but we never had, it was never really documented. The lack of building design and appearance standards, I think that was something that was raised. It makes sense to take a look at. Traffic keeps coming up, but I mean, the thing about traffic is it's here, more's coming. And, we can either sit and just let it happen like we have done for the last 20 years. Or we can do something to try to make that problem at least not as bad as it otherwise would be. So, I mean, one of the things you can do is put housing at the northern end of the city, right near the highway, right? So if people live there and don't work in Groton, they get right on the highway and they're actually going in the opposite, the traffic flow for that group is opposite to the EV traffic flow. So when people are, coming into Groton in the morning, those folks are leaving, right? And it doesn't take them on any significant time on residential streets. So we're no worse for putting housing in there. Because it can only get better from that. Really, I don't think it can get worse. I don't see how it would. But anyway, that was a traffic's an issue, but I think that's, less of a real concern. There seems to be less concern about building heights north of Bridge. There seems to be a general consensus that the old roller rink property would be a good place to develop a larger building.
Even the guy who lives across the street from it said, sure, put a skyscraper there, I don't care.
Right, I mean, it's.
Of all people to pitch a fit about a view.
He's always looking at his railroad tracks and scrapping trees and stuff.
I mean, this is feedback well received.
Yeah. Yeah.
No buzz.
So, so there's not a lot of, there was less concern about the north side of Bridge, I think.
I wanted to look at the street on, where the traffic light is, where you come off of 95, north of that. Is that where you're thinking?
Yeah, but-
Like the Bridge Street.
But heading east from there,
it was,
That's Bridge Street where,
Yeah, that's Bridge Street.
I think he also mentioned the old Christie Plating Company. So you come up North Street and you've got that small complex there with the storage area that Advance has. I
right,
think he was mentioning that area also.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Well, but that's, you know, I mean,
You know,
that's on that again, that's closer to a residential neighborhood, right? That parcel, and that's.
Very
that's
small
50%.
parcel.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
not
yeah,
There's
it's
not.
like, I don't think you could put a 6-story building.
well, right, but I mean, that goes to the idea that there are other boundaries involved besides the vertical.
Right.
That, you know, you can only go so high before you have to include parking and arable land and, you know, whatever else and all those other restrictions that we've been talking about. So there are limitations there, but in the rollout of how we're looking at this, I think we can do a better job of dispelling the concerns about what that looks like. Because the only thing everybody's been keying on is going straight up. You know, not, well, you can go this far, but you gotta have this much, and you go this far, you gotta have more. And so that, the concern about this height eliminates this property and that property and this property. So we could, we could do, the worst case scenario analysis in terms of if they leveled that building and this building, and they wanted to build this building here, you know what I mean? What are the maximums involved?
see, that's why I brought up the three major owners of properties.
Yeah.
Because they could technically consolidate those properties and have sufficient land to do something.
And the other thing too. The advantage to that is not so much the height, but the ability to build something that has a neighborhood feel to it. Because they have the room to do it. And I will tell you that when I talk to developers, that's exactly what I talk about.
One really good comment was related to the map, like when we put this next proposal together, I think it's important the graphics are really, focused on presenting a good picture to the community.
Really
Same thing with renderings and things, it's so important, because it's a very valid point, the public needs to look and understand, because I think we shot ourselves in the foot a lot of times, because some of this stuff that people were worked up about
Didn't have a
wasn't,
picture
they were
that
worked up
spoke
about
1,000 words.
some good stuff, but other things could have been allayed, a lot of fears allayed by having, it's all in the visual. So that's what's just my recommendation when we, swiftly move to some better community, make sure we get the budget for it, but.
Yeah, I looked at the topo map, and the backside of Church Street to a building on the west side of Thames.
Yeah.
That building west side of Thames with the grade there toward the river, you can probably go 80 feet and right out the back porch of Church Street, you can look right over it. But you don't get the sense of that. And if we include the east side of Thames Street, now that building's gonna be right in the face,
Right.
So
that's what I'm suggesting, that was where the real.
And one more thing that's important about, the reason why that's important about is because descriptions can be manipulated, and we need to suss out who in the community doesn't want any development, any more people, and is just finding objections about it, so that people can assess that objection. They have the right to do that. They can say, Groton, we don't, and people who are legitimately concerned about the aesthetics and how it fits in there. And when you show them something rational, they're interested in some constructive move forward. I'm just, like I said, I'm concerned that nothing will get done and time marches on, and people who have housing here already have it, and we're not providing any opportunities in a small city to have, someone come up. Remember, this is gonna be other people's money that they're gonna invest in these areas. So, we need to put the proper constraints and oversight, but we need to create something that welcomes them to put some proposals together that answers the need that we are saying we need in our POCD, we're saying we need in our town council meetings, which we need to take action. And, so anyway, renderings are important, visuals are really, really important, so that next time we can get through this stuff and you know, get to a point that what gets approved is what the community wants and meets those needs.
I'm going to ask all of you to please come to a council meeting when I have to defend my budget and say exactly those things, because some of that is a skill set that I have, some of it is a skill set that I don't have, and much of it is time that I don't have because I have other things that I have to do. So I totally agree with you. There's nothing I would love more than to have, you know, really evocative watercolor drawings and, you know, site maps that show exactly what you can see from where.
There's some good 3D renderings. You can spin around visuals of what the, maybe
Not my
do some
skill
massive,
set,
like
so
this
you're-
would be the maximum. This is what it
It's
would
not
look
gonna
like.
happen without that. I mean, you saw that, so.
Right, but I think that beyond, you know, your budget limits, we can bring the, you know, the power of the city to bear. City has an IT department. I mean, I think we can, you know. City has an IT
Oh,
department.
yeah,
Yeah,
they don't do
have
that type of work.
Yes.
There's some skilled people in that IT department. I mean, we, you know, there are things we can leverage.
They're in
here that-
charge, true, but that's just not their work task
All right.
or responsibility.
Well, I think,
I don't think that's an excuse not to
I
provide the
agree with
information.
you, I just didn't want.
You know, and
I
So-
totally agree with you, and there's nothing I would like more than to do exactly that.
and if I might suggest, both of you, because you're both an important role in this, is to talk to the mayor, who has the control of the budget, who talks to the council to say, look, we need more money because of this. Because the mayor is certainly interested in development. And if we're going to sell it to the residents, the graphic thing is, it's a big portion.
And documents are
If you're
made.
gonna sell it to the commissioners, we gotta see this.
Hey,
They'll all
not-
have the same objections again if it's not documented.
Hey,
not to pick a scab, but one thing we've done with economic development is have public engagement. That is not constrained by, you know, the bounds of a public hearing. In the way that we did this here, we could have a, you know, a session where we talk about the impetus for the changes, the ideas behind it, dialogue, you know, present some drawings, that sort of thing. Where we're not locked into a glide path to a decision, yes or no, right? Workshop it essentially before we complete our homework and our committee work to draft the application, the next application.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a suggestion because I know Leslie's time is limited. And it seems like we get more accomplished when we sit here together and discuss things. So instead of sending you an email, I agree with Carrie that we need to get together soon, talk about this and what we want to see change. Get that information to you so you can just, you don't have to go through all our emails. You don't have to pick out which one you feel, because you know, if you pick out this one, that one's going to be mad. So we can sit here with you and say, this is the agreement we have. So if you can just change these, it'd take minimal of your time. And I think it'd be the fastest way to get what we need accomplished. Now, nobody really wants to come in another night, but I think it would be worth their while.
I'm willing to try that.
Everybody else? Come on, Tara, I agree.
I like that. And I think.
Use it on the record.
It's going in the minutes.
Just use the public input and the proposal we had here. Let's pull it apart, talk about what those things are, put something together, get it to Leslie, maybe have a meeting in 2 weeks and do it. And then by the next meeting,
We've got revised.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and then you can engage the public, have another public hearing or whatever, but I think it's important we send a message to the community that we are working the issue.
I think it's
And
more
give them the
important to let the
ability, and give
community
them the
know.
ability to have input on something. They made some good thing, we propose something new.
I think it's more important to let them know that we have the answers too, so that we're not putting something out there without, that we're in the same position again.
Yeah, but it's not rocket science. We have all the pieces in front of
Well,
us.
it takes time.
Yeah, so we can't let it take a year.
No, I don't think.
All right,
anything's
so what
here,
day
but
are
we
we
also
now
have a piece of
available?
rights.
So the proposal on the table is that we come back together in the next week or two with Leslie, right? And we go over the feedback and kind of give her some direction on where we want to head the next iteration that would then come to a meeting of the commission on, you know, we've got, the next one is on March the 19th. But, you know, it all depends on how much time it's gonna, you know, Leslie's time to pull it all together. But
Look, I am,
That's unrealistic. It's not gonna happen that fast, but.
I,
We're gonna have to have some of these reports substantiate at least generic impacts.
But I think we don't need the reports yet. I think we just need to look at.
Well,
what
before
is
we
it
go to
we
a
want.
hearing, we do, yeah.
yeah, but to start the discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
not talking about going to a public hearing March 19th.
absolutely not, no.
No.
I think
No,
we
no.
need to workshop
Yeah.
about, you know, what our next steps are and what we like and don't like and what that looks like. And in that workshop, discuss how we will roll that out, you know, to get to a public hearing where we're on a path to.
Let's see, how many housing units can be built in this zone now, like no change? Like is there
two
any,
per parcel,
what's that?
two
Two per
per
parcel.
parcel.
Okay, so until we look at that, that's not changing. So all I'm saying is follow every step to engage the public, but we can do the work here together to come up with something based on public input, a very good thing that will get us to a good position to engage them with something that they want. I mean, it's not rocket science. It was very clear. A lot of people said, oh, well, remove the height thing, and I love the idea. Right? And you guys have worked so hard about, you know, the destination and, you know, this is the entry point to Groton. I mean, we have to start, you know, engaging and making it possible for ideas and, you know, development to happen that's in line with what people want. Like, we need to bridge the gap. So I'm, you know, in it. So I'm all for a meeting as soon as possible, all of us together and getting something down that helps you, Leslie, put something together that the public wants and moving on it. I'm really concerned not doing it now. It's gonna get kicked down the road and it's just creating a lack of opportunity in the community for individuals who always pay the price for us not taking action.
Okay, so,
So,
okay,
the date, yeah,
Not this week, right?
no,
Tomorrow night.
for my fingernails to grow back.
And it doesn't matter whether or not we're in this room or not, or.
Doesn't have to be.
March 13th. How's that look?
What do you suggest?
March 13th.
What's that?
March 13th.
That's good for me, yeah.
that's.
13th, yeah, that's okay.
It's all right. Gives us a
I think we should come in there. Should go to the interview. Yes, for the next one.
Any chance we could go a week earlier?
If we do it on the 13th, we would not be able to use this room.
We don't need this one.
How about the 6th after EDC?
Oh, after the EDC?
Mhm.
Yeah, so, so you'll start at like 7:30, 7:45?
Or 7? EDC is 5:30 to 7.
Oh, sorry, yes, okay, yep, that works.
That's how it's working in my mind.
Let's do the
And
6th.
swap that 5:30.
Wednesday the 6th.
6 at 7.
Six, I had an EDC meeting that night.
Till
Is
7.
it gonna be?
We're gonna do it after that.
Yeah.
No, yours.
Well,
in
he's in
town.
the town.
5:30, so we'll be done by 6:30 or 7, so.
So
So
7 here.
7 would work for
Okay.
you too.
Let's meet on Wednesday.
Oh, that's Wednesday the 6th.
Can I just remind you that, that we
What
should
time are you
try and
saying?
get
5:30?
this room because even though this is.
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
Even though you're talking about having sort of an internal meeting, it is still a public
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So just size of room is the only.
Yeah, no,
So-
I agree.
So the sixth is this, see, is this room as well
After 7.
at 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, so good.
You have sufficient time to notice it. I don't notice it.
Yeah, it'll be a
What about-
special meeting, 24 hours.
March the sixth at 7 o'clock. Okay, anything else we need to do tonight?
Well, we had another application.
You just need to
I have
accept,
Charlie on the list.
and you don't even actually need to act on this, but you have
I didn't get anything on the other application. Was it sent out?
no, not yet. It's just, you're just accepting it.
You
And
said-
it's automatically accepted whether you say you're accepting it or not.
We're logging in the date for the start of the.
Yeah, it is,
This is the one we reviewed before.
yes, this is the same one that's coming back. Remember, he had a week to do what he needed to do. That wasn't done. And the fire marshal and the building inspector stopped by there and it turned out that he had rented the apartment. So, once again, he is coming back to remedy the violation.
I was gonna say, I thought I saw someone over there.
I'm,
70 Bridge Street.
Yeah.
so you can make a motion to accept it if you want to.
Well, I mean, it's accepted automatically.
Yes. And if you want to make a policy decision that I not put those things on the agenda, that's fine too. If you don't, I'm happy to keep doing it this way. This is the way you have always done it.
It's
I'm
fine.
adapting.
Yeah.
I move we acknowledge receipt of the application at 70 Bridge Street.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to accept, motion by Mr. Rusk, second by Mr. Forrest. To accept the site plan number 498, special permit number 472, application for 70 Bridge Street.
Acknowledge.
Acknowledge, I'm sorry. Should that is acknowledge the right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna acknowledge it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's. Acknowledge it, 6-0. The daycare thing,
What I would suggest that you do for that, because we really do need to get this done. But I don't think anybody is up for a presentation on this.
No.
But if you open the public hearing and then continue it to the next regularly scheduled meeting, we will make sure to notice it again. It's already been noticed a few times in the paper and then it will be on the agenda with time limits.
Public hearing for what?
for the zoning amendments number TA 02.
It's language that's straight from the statute.
State statute that allows the expansion of where daycare centers can go, right? And home daycares.
It says that the state has sole jurisdiction over certain things.
We don't have any choice in this.
Right.
Exactly, that's, I mean, this is.
Yeah.
That's what this is, that's why it's been rolled over, because we don't have a choice, and it was the easiest thing to roll over, because we kept running out of time. And energy.
So you want to open the public hearing on
So
it?
open it and continue it, and then we'll renotice it and hopefully vote on it. At the
I mean,
next
it shouldn't,
regular
yeah,
meeting.
it shouldn't take a ton of time, right, to review this. But we do have to have a public hearing on it since it's a regulation change. Okay,
And we're opening the public hearing now because it's convenient, because it's been noticed, is that?
and to make sure that it gets,
Otherwise, you'd have to renotice it, right?
yep,
Public notice.
and it keeps getting really expensive. Legal ads are painfully.
You sold me there.
So we're gonna open the public, I'm gonna open the public hearing. Good evening, I'm Paul Kunkemuller, I'm Chair of the City of Groton.
I waived the reading of.
I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna read the opening and all quit, okay? I'd like to open the public hearing for site plan number 498, special permit number 472, Greg, I'm sorry.
No, this is the,
Site zoning amendment number TA 02-23, text amendment, section 2, words and terms. Section 3, residential zones, section 6, user related provisions, daycare. Section 7, parking and loading regulations. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing until the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Streeter, second by Mr. Boris. All those in favor of continuing the public hearing until
19.
March 19th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Okay, open.
And next month's meeting is on Tuesday. We're done with our Wednesday meetings.
Tuesday, what is it? I may have a conflict.
That's the 19th. That's the Tuesday. See. Gotta make your trial.
All right,
But we'll see.
Okay, that's the regular meeting. If we're gonna have people not be here, please let me know so I can make sure that we'll have a forum.
Yep.
And if not,
Motion to
we'll,
adjourn.
I got one more question. So in the board of staff, the audio, video availability, what's the spec?
nothing. Sorry, what's the
The,
question?
the report of staff, the audio, video availability that has been raised.
Yes. They will be going on the website if they're not there already. Some of them are. And I believe that says purchased copies of the recordings for the last several years and we'll be putting them on YouTube, is that correct?
I have put them on my own YouTube channel, yeah,
Okay,
but I mean, I'd be great to see it go up on GMTV with the rest of the municipal meetings.
that's a meeting to discuss with them, that's a issue to discuss with the mayors. I have no issue with that. I just also have no control over it.
But we are, but in terms of the audio and video availability from the city website. Is that,
Yes, we're working on getting all meetings up on to the city website.
And Leslie, if you need help for the town EDC, we have something hooked in where the Zoom goes right to Greeley and he puts it up. So I don't know the magic, but it's pretty straightforward. And it's not very impactful to staff. So it might be helpful if you want, I can get you more details on it, but
There's some technology
I think they
concerns
just,
with the
they
room.
log into the Zoom. They have their own, Groton Public Library has their own back door. So that, I don't want to misspeak, but we don't upload anything. We just record the Zoom thing and then Sean is able to pull it down and post it. So you may
I
have
have
that same
no
ability to
problem
put it
with
to the
this
town.
happening. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm good at a lot of things. That's not one. Sierra can attest to that.
all right, so that's where that's.
We are working on it.
Okay, and it'd be nice if it was on some place in the city website where people could find it.
I totally agree.
Okay, Jerry, you made a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
For a second,
Second.
Second from
Nobody wants to.
Morris.
Who's gonna vote against it?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're adjourned at 10:08.